Chapter 1594. Under the majestic sound of Sanskrit, the light of Buddha illuminated the universe, and one green lotus, after another, arrived in the heavenly river. On the green lotus sat the Dipankara ancient Buddha, Mahasthamaprapta Bodhisattva, Buddha of sandalwood merit, victorious fighting Buddha, and many other Buddhist experts. It wasn't just the Buddhist experts who were searching for the awakened sky cosmos. A portion of the Buddhist Bhantis who were on the other side of the battlefield with the demon race were also summoned back to participate in today's battle. It's really the Fushi zither. Did fellow Taoist Luya exchange it for you? Ancient Buddha Randang looked at the zither in great Taoist Master Xiandu's arms. There are still 3 zither strings. The Fushi zither was rumored to be the personal treasure of Emperor Shi, who was one of the 3 sovereigns in the Archean era, along with Emperor Hua and Emperor Dong. It was heavily damaged, and its whereabouts were unknown after the Archean era. Now that it had finally reappeared in the world, only 4 strings were left of the broken zither. Be it Tao Lord Luya or the great Taoist Master Xiandu, none of them could take the initiative to control the Fushi zither to fight against the enemy. However, when enduring the might of the Tao realm, it could be used to block a Tao ancestor for a moment. However, every time he used it, a string would break, until it was completely exhausted. Now, the great Taoist Master Xiandu had used that zither to temporarily stop the heavenly lord of the immeasurable from descending, and help the goddess Wudong obtain the immortal slaying ancient sword. However, the Khanate Taiji diagram quickly dissipated. Clearly, it would only last for a moment. The immeasurable heavenly venerate continued to move. The white jade door flashed, and the second string of the Fushi zither, in great Taoist Master Xiandu's arms, began to tremble. But right at this moment, the jade gate suddenly shook violently. It was as if on the other side, the immeasurable heavenly lord himself was being disturbed and obstructed. That's good. Yen Zhaoga, the great Taoist Xiandu, and the others let out a sigh of relief. The one obstructing the heavenly lord of the immeasurable might very well be the future Buddha. The immeasurable heavenly lord had originally intended to stop pestering the future Buddha, directly abandoning that humanly essence stone fragment, and allowing the future Buddha to refine it as he himself would descend here, and take down Yen Zhaoga, and the others, as well as the immortal exterminating 4 swords. However, the future Buddha, who already knew of his scheme, temporarily put aside his own process of refining the humanly essence stone shards, and turned around to attack the immeasurable heavenly lord, making it difficult for him to escape. The positions of both sides had been reversed. Yen Zhaoga, Yang Jian, and the others had purposely leaked the information about the immortal ending ancient sword being in the immortal court to the demon race and the blessed lands of the White Lotus. The demon race and the blessed lands of the White Lotus naturally wished to obtain the immortal extermination formation as well. Because of the immortal extinguishing sword, the immeasurable heavenly lord clearly had the advantage of striking first. The future Buddha would definitely not allow him to succeed. The 2 heretic Tao fathers were once more locked in a fierce, explosive contest. Of course, this didn't mean that the future Buddha, or the Eastern monarch Tai, were helping the orthodox Taoism. They were doing this for their own sake. Yen Zhaoga could easily guess that other than the Dipankara ancient Buddha, and the other Buddhism bigwigs, the demon race great sages led by Taoist Luya had already arrived. The battle between the 2 heretic sects, which was already entangled with each other, became even more intense. In this battle, heroes had gathered, and powerful enemies were everywhere. However, for the direct disciples of the Tao sect, being able to maintain the battle at a level below the Tao realm was already a blessing in disguise, and it was difficult for them to ask for more. Even so, they would still face attacks from all sorts of powerful enemies. In fact, it was not impossible for the Tao ancestor to temporarily put aside their conflict and still attack them first. If they won this battle, it would be akin to a carp leaping through the dragon's gate, gaining boundless opportunities. If they lost, they might be completely annihilated, and Taoism's direct lineage's backbone would be completely shattered. Yen Zhaoga and the others were united. They could only fight. The North Ocean clone, Xue Fei, and Pan Pan simultaneously manifested their golden bodies of the great sage, and their demonic qi surged towards the skies. Sua Mingzhang, Yan Di, and the others also took the initiative to welcome the Western Paradise's Buddhas. However, at the same time, the heavenly river that everyone was in suddenly surged with numerous formation patterns, which flickered with radiance. The originally clear river water instantly turned dark yellow. At the same time, gusts of black winds blew by. 9 Ben's Yellow River Formation. The Immortal Court's people didn't appear in large numbers like the Western Pure Land's Buddhist Bantis. Only the percussion Heavenly Lord appeared. He stood on a faraway star and didn't approach it. His silhouette disappeared within the black winds and yellow river along with the star. The 9 Ben's Yellow River Formation here was created by the immeasurable Heavenly Lord. Only, the immeasurable Heavenly Lord had yet to personally descend. He was guided by the percussion Heavenly Lord. However, even so, Yin Zhaoge and the others could already feel its might. Even a grand Heavenly Lord had to be wary of it. At this moment, the two sides continued to wrestle, causing the entire heavenly river to tremble. It was as if an enraged dragon was rampaging within the void's outskirts. Although the immortal extermination 4 swords had fallen into the hands of the Taoism lineage, the Dipankara ancient Buddha, and the other Buddhism bigwigs, didn't seem dejected or fearful. Instead, they all pounced towards the immortal extermination formation, which was unable to unleash its full might. The group of Taoism grand heavenly immortals didn't retreat, and immediately went forward. The golden body of the great sage formed by Yin Zhaoge's North Ocean clone took the lead. He raised the Ru-I golden cudgel, and struck towards the victorious fighting Buddha. Both sides were fighting for time. Within the heavenly river, a battle instantly broke out. Chapter 1595. Coward, take this. The demon monkey raised the Ru-I golden cudgel, and slammed it towards the dignified Buddha. Ever since Yin Zhaoge wreaked havoc in the immortal court, the victorious Buddha fought the immortal court once again. The victorious fighting Buddha looked at the demon monkey, then at the Ru-I golden cudgel. His expression was calm. When he revealed his golden body, everyone was startled. His 18 arms held various treasures such as jade umbrella cover, flower jar, fish intestines, divine pestle, treasured phial, golden bell, golden bow, silver halberd and banners. However, unlike before, the current victorious fighting Buddha's golden body didn't have the original 20 heads. Instead, it had 22. Losing the Ru-I golden cudgel in the past allowed him to let go of his past. While he lost his divine weapon, his cultivation improved. Everyone present was a top-notch figure, and they immediately understood what was going on. The victorious fighting Buddha's cultivation was learned from Grand Master Subhuti and the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit. Grand Master Subhuti was the Tathagata Buddha, who was also the Western sect's second sect master, Taoist Juanti. To the top-notch bigwig experts present, this information wasn't a secret anymore. In the past, when Taoist Juanti fought against others, he manifested a golden body with 24 heads and 18 arms. The current victorious fighting Buddha was clearly a step closer to Taoist Juanti's golden body. However, Yin Zhaoge's North Ocean clone's golden body of the great sage didn't care about it at all. Instead, he swung the Ru-I golden cudgel and slammed it down. The victorious fighting Buddha's 18 arms flipped around, attacking and defending. He blocked the demon monkey's attack and retaliated. After nearly 100 years of cultivation, his previous injuries had already recovered. Now he was at his peak condition, and had even improved. In the past, he could already suppress a single golden body of the great sage before his injuries had fully recovered. Now he was even stronger. However, now that the Ru-I golden cudgel appeared in the demon monkey's hands, the situation had changed. The victorious fighting Buddha was clearer than anyone else about how ruthless and tyrannical this super weapon was. Although his injuries had recovered and his cultivation had improved, he was currently facing the monkey, who was wielding the divine metal treasure. Instead, he was trying his best to delay Yin Zhaoge's golden body of the great sage. The battle between the two sides immediately became white-hot. They fought to the heavens and the earth, and it was like a wildfire. While Xue Fei and Pan Pan didn't have the Ru-I golden cudgel in their hands, they were still domineering and domineering. However, Yendi immediately slashed with his saber, obstructing the virtuous splendor Buddha's path, preventing him from taking another step forward. The great strength Bodhisattva frowned slightly upon seeing this. As he waved his palm, boundless Buddha lights filled the heavens and earth like a sea of white flames. However, before the great strength Bodhisattva's Buddha lights could descend, a vast land appeared between him and Yendi. The Buddha lights covered the land, illuminating the world above without a hint of darkness. However, it couldn't penetrate through the land and illuminate the space below. A woman dressed in luxurious clothes appeared before the great strength Bodhisattva and said, "We meet again. Please guide me, Bodhisattva." Earth Queen. The great strength Bodhisattva inhaled deeply and clasped his palms together. Under the illumination of the Buddha lights, the land was scorched, and the radiance grew more intense. The woman dressed in luxurious clothes had a calm expression on her face. She blocked the great strength Bodhisattva's attack unhurriedly. Beneath them, the two great formations were clashing. The scales of victory were slowly but surely tilting towards the immortal extermination formation. Yen Zhaoge's familiarity with the Nine Bends Yellow River formation slowly came into use. Since the immeasurable Heavenly Lord wasn't here personally, while Yen Zhaoge couldn't break through the Nine Bends Yellow River formation for the time being, he became more and more confident as time passed. The incongruence Divine Mother was refining the immortal ending sword. If she didn't refine the immortal ending sword, she wouldn't be able to leave with it. On the other hand, as long as she could completely refine the ancient sword and get rid of the immeasurable Heavenly Lord's imprint, Orthodox Taoism would be able to claim the sword for themselves. They would be able to leave and fight whenever they wanted. At that time, the dragon would return to the ocean, and the tiger would return to the mountains. What they were fighting for was this bit of time. The Taoism cultivators only had to block the enemy's attacks. Of course, other than the Buddhists, the demon race was also hiding by the side, waiting to reap the benefits. As such, while Yen Zhaoge and the others were fighting against the Buddhists, they were also constantly on guard against the demon race. The great Taoist Xian Du hugged the Fushi zither and stood quietly by the side. While the Fushi zither couldn't be used to attack, the Taoism Heavenly Lord himself wasn't to be underestimated. Taoist Xian Du, you finally stepped into the mortal realm. The Dipankara ancient Buddha looked at him and said slowly, "This tribulation has too many implications. I had no choice but to come." The great Taoist Xian Du answered calmly. Before the Dipankara ancient Buddha could say anything else, flames suddenly surged in front of him. In this battle, the immortal ending sword's problem had determined that Taoism had to defend themselves. However, there were still people who took the initiative. For example, Sua Mingzhang, who appeared in front of the Dipankara ancient Buddha. The short-haired man strode forward and crossed the void. He took the initiative to challenge the strongest expert in the enemy's camp. August Flying Eagle said. Chapter 1597. You've created your own path and explored it independently. You've reached the zenith heaven realm in less than 100 years, but you're already so powerful. I wonder what will happen if you have more time. Dipankara ancient Buddha looked at Sua Mingzhang, who was fighting with the sea calming pearl inside. Looking at you reminds me of Sun Wukong and Yang Jian. The 24 sea calming pearls returned to his side, like the 24 heavens, filling the void. After the Dipankara ancient Buddha temporarily restrained its power, the Milky Way flowed a little more smoothly. Sua Mingzhang looked at the sea calming pearl with interest. He didn't flinch, but was eager to have a try. The ancient Buddha opposite him, on the contrary, put away the light in the perfect Buddha's light behind his head. The purple light and the golden light disappeared, leaving only the gray light. It was neither black nor white. In the gray light, the Buddha of all beings emerged, like all phenomena of reincarnation. That was more profound and mysterious than the sword Buddha and Chu Su's reincarnation sword scripture. Taoism friend Sua, don't be in a hurry. Dipankara ancient Buddha said lightly. As far as I know, what you care about is martial arts cultivation and exploration, and the struggle for orthodoxy is only secondary. The reason why you hate the celestial court is not for yourself, but because your Taoism companion died in the hands of the celestial court martial artists. Is that true? Sua Mingzhang looked at Dipankara ancient Buddha coldly, without a word. Dipankara ancient Buddha didn't take it seriously, and smiled quietly. On the Taoism side, Tai Heavenly Lord of Salvation is in danger, and Emperor Feng Du is not around. No one can break the limit of reincarnation, and Western Heaven still has me and Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. If her body and soul are destroyed, and she is doomed eternally, let's not talk about it. But your Taoism companion should still have her slew left, right? His tone was calm, but it shocked everyone like thunder. Although it has been many years, it doesn't mean that there is no chance. As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked, whether they were enemies or allies, and looked at Sua Mingzhang. The result of the exchange is not something that Junhuang would like to see. The short-haired man interrupted the ancient Dipankara Buddha's words calmly. Do you want me to watch her commit suicide and lose her life again? The ancient Buddha fell into silence for a moment. After a while he shook his head and sighed. That's true. If he wasn't so fierce and resolute, he wouldn't have fallen in the past. Sua Mingzhang did not say much. He looked directly at the Dipankara ancient Buddha, and walked forward step by step toward the 24 heavens transformed by the sea-calming pearl. His figure became taller and taller under the flames. At the same time that the ancient Randang Buddha activated the sea-calming pearl to fight, he looked at the great Taoist master Xian Du, and the Fushi Zither in his arms. Fellow Taoist Luya, you're scheming. However, the Fushi Zither has limited time. 9 Nether? Great Taoist master Xian Du's eyes flickered. The ancient Dipankara Buddha smiled but did not reply. High up in the endless void far away, as if it was in a different place from the world, there was a jade gate, and a white lotus fighting endlessly. On the other side, a green lotus flew over from an unknown direction. Almost at the same time, an ancient bronze bell appeared and clashed with the green lotus. Neither side gave way to the other. While they were entangled, a pitch-black ancient mirror suddenly appeared. Back then, the pitch-black ancient mirror had once fought with the ancient bronze bell. Later on, the green lotus appeared and joined forces with the ancient bronze bell to force the black mirror to retreat. However, their positions had changed now. The pitch-black mirror attacked again. It condensed a pure white mirror light, and shone it at the ancient bell. The ancient bell rang, and the sound was deafening. The invisible sound of the bell bounced off the pure white mirror light. The black mirror did not relax and continued to fight with the ancient bell. The ancient bronze bell was blocked by the black mirror. In that case, it could not care about the green lotus. As the green lotus floated, it descended, leaving the endless high ground, and descending into the vast void of the mortal world. The battle in the heavenly river was intense. Black winds blew, and Sword Chi soared into the sky. The entire Milky Way kept distorting, and from time to time, there would be terrifying scenes of water flow being cut off. However, at that moment, the hearts of both parties trembled slightly. Everyone looked in the same direction. At some point in time, a green lotus had appeared in the river. The green lotus had yet to bloom, but the Buddhist chanting immediately became even louder and more shocking. Amitabha Buddha! Everyone's heart trembled. Great Taoist Xian Du raised the Fushi Zither high up. The remaining 3 strings on the zither were trembling non-stop. With a wung sound, another string broke. Radiance lit up and instantly spread to the surroundings, forming an incomparably huge earlier Heaven 8 trigrams diagram, which completely enveloped the entire heavenly river. After being enveloped by the earlier Heaven 8 trigrams diagram, the Buddhist chanting in the heavenly river became much deeper. While the green lotus was still bobbing up and down in the river, it would not bloom for a while. Yin Zhaoga and the others temporarily felt relieved. However, they still felt heavy. Amitabha Buddha, one of the oldest and strongest existences in the world, the master of the Western Pure Lands, and one of the 2 Buddhist patriarchs. It controlled storms and directly clashed with the 9-headed bug's 9 heavens astral winds. Blood chi rose from Yangjian's body. The mist of blood condensed and turned into a third projection of light. It was the image of a golden-winged rock. As the rock flapped its wings, Yangjian's speed was like the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles. Time and space were nothing to him. Even in front of grand heavenly realm opponents, he seemed to be everywhere. Behind the victorious fighting Buddha, the great strength bodhisattva, and the nine-headed bug, Yang Jian's figure appeared at the same time. However, Feng Yunxing had ascended to the grand heavenly realm, and her 3 flowers at once prominence made her powerful in the first place. She then carried out the assassination with all her strength. If one was caught unprepared and suddenly attacked, the number of people who had the confidence to survive, including all 3 tyrants present, was limited. The demon race didn't have a protective treasure like the Azure Lotus flag, so they naturally couldn't resist these sneak attacks. Taking a step back, even if Feng Yunxing didn't make a move in the future, merely the invisible threat she posed was sufficient to cause others to have misgivings and be unable to act freely. Even the ancient Dipankara Buddha split out 6 sea calming pearls and attacked Feng Yunxing from all directions to help the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles. Sut. Suo of Zhang extended Sut. And Sua Song. As the starlight disappeared, the cold, lonely darkness became the ruler. It was like a graveyard that kept expanding, burying the void. Under the shroud of darkness, the 6 sea calming pearls that were smashing towards Feng Yunxing slowed down by a beat. Without the sea of calming pearls, Feng Yunxing retracted her saber after exchanging a blow with the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles. The abyss of chaos shrunk to a point. It seemed to have lost the concept of space. The last bit of light flickered and was about to disappear. The rock of 10,000 cloudy miles snorted. His figure flashed. When he reappeared, there seemed to be more than one golden-winged great rock appearing in different places. Since he couldn't stop Feng Yunxing, he couldn't let Feng Yunxing lead him by the nose. Instead, he took the initiative and attacked the Immortal Extermination Formation and the others. Apart from Yang Jian and Sua Mingzhang, the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles appeared beside the others. Some attacked Yin Di. Some attacked the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor. The 3 golden bodies of the great sage didn't miss. There was even a golden-winged rock that bypassed the people from the Dao sect and headed straight for the Immortal Vanquishing Array. However, Yang Jian's figure suddenly appeared in front of the golden-winged rock and blocked its path. In other places, Yang Jian's figure also flashed to intercept the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles. The rock of 10,000 cloudy miles flew into a rage. It flapped its wings and raised its speed to the extreme, shifting through space-time as it battled with Yang Jian. Yang Jian's figure was shrouded by the golden-winged rock's shadow and was unpredictable, not letting the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles have the upper hand. On the other side, the victorious fighting Buddha, Mahastamaprapta Bodhisattva, and the other Buddhist Bantis raised the Azure Lotus flag and charged toward the Buddhist kingdom in the palm unleashed by Yang Jian. Sua Mingzhang frowned, but he couldn't let go of the Dipankara ancient Buddha in front of him. Otherwise, the ancient Dipankara Buddha definitely wouldn't have joined forces with him to deal with Tao Lord Luya. Instead, he would have used him to block Tao Lord Luya, while the ancient Buddha would go after the Immortal Extermination Array himself. Although Yang Jian had verified that he was not completely powerless against the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber, there were still the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles and other opponents by the side, preventing him from truly fighting Tao Lord Luya. He wanted to release the victorious fighting Buddha, Mahastamaprapta Bodhisattva, and the other Buddhist venerables. Under normal circumstances, the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles would have gone to intercept the Buddhist cultivators. The demon clan and the Buddhist sect were also rivals in the fight for the Immortal Extermination Formation. However, the problem was that the victorious fighting Buddha and the others had the green lotus flag in their hands. Apart from Yang Jian's Buddha kingdom, that was able to trap them with his Buddha kingdom, the victorious fighting Buddha and the others could just ignore the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles and charge straight into the Immortal Slaying Formation. Not even Tao Lord Luya's Immortal Slaying Saber would be able to do anything to them. If they were to charge into the Immortal Execution Array, the consequences would be worse than if the Black Cloud's Immortal was alone. Therefore, Yang Jian could only suppress the victorious fighting Buddha and the other Buddhist Bantis while fighting the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles. At the same time, he had to be careful of Luya's Immortal Slaying Flying Saber. Just as Tao Lord Luya looked majestic and intimidating for a moment, the heavenly river before him suddenly shook slightly once more. 6 beams of starlight lit up in the void, and the murderous aura of weapons filled the air. A stern-looking man, wearing a crown and Taoist robes, just like the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor, appeared. When the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor saw him, his expression was calm, as if he wasn't surprised at all. "You're here, fellow Taoist?" The Buddha of Sandalwood Merit, who was fighting against the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor, sighed. "Fellow Taoist North Star, you still came after all." The people present were the top experts of the Taoist, Buddhist, and demon sects, so they naturally recognized the man's identity. It was one of the 4 imperials of the Heavenly Court's Divine Palace. It had always been on par with the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor and the Earth Queen, North Star Upper Palace Heavenly Sovereign Emperor. He was one of the few surviving Taoism Heavenly Lords after the Great Calamity. Due to their differing views, he parted ways with the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor, the Incongruence Divine Mother, and the others. In the past, after Yen Zhaoge wreaked havoc in the Immortal Court, the Immortal Court forcefully attacked the Tao universe and the world beyond worlds as revenge with the support of the Western Pure Lands. Ever since then, the North Star Emperor rarely appeared, and his whereabouts were unknown. During today's battle, almost all of the Taoism experts were mobilized. Even the great Taoist Xian Du, who usually resided in the Tushita Palace, was here. However, the North Star Emperor still didn't appear. Everyone thought that the North Star Emperor wouldn't come. However, this Taoism Heavenly Lord still came. His arrival caused Taoist Luya to frown. It wasn't because of the North Star Emperor's cultivation. Instead, it was because Taoist Luya had never forgotten something. The North Star Emperor had a treasure in his possession. It was the Jade Clear Primordial Heavenly Lord Grand Master's 3 treasures Jade Scepter. Just like how the Incongruence Divine Mother couldn't directly wield the green duckweed, the North Star Emperor couldn't truly wield the 3 treasures Jade Scepter. However, to Taoist Luya, this was a huge threat. Order. As expected, the moment the North Star Emperor appeared, he immediately cupped his hands without saying a word. A jade scepter flickering with purple, white, and golden colors flew into the sky. It transformed into a ray of radiance and crashed towards Taoist Luya. Taoist Luya wanted to dodge, but he couldn't. The radiance's target wasn't him. Instead, it was the gourd in his hand. The 3 treasures Jade Scepter transformed into a stream of radiance and plugged the gourd's mouth. The white radiance was instantly interrupted, and the gourd fell from Taoist Luya's hand uncontrollably. It floated within the dark river, and its movements were erratic. The North Star Emperor used the 3 treasures Jade Scepter to block Taoist Luya's immortal slaying flying saber. Previously, he had always avoided antagonizing the Immortal Court. In fact, he even helped the Immortal Court against the blessed lands of the White Lotus. When others saw him dealing with the demon race's Taoist Luya, they couldn't help but feel suspicious. However, the North Star Emperor immediately challenged the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit as his opponent. He replaced the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor to obstruct the Black Cloud's Immortal in the Immortal Extermination formation. It might seem like an unnecessary action, but his intentions were clear. Without the Immortal slaying gourd's threat, Yang Jian and the others immediately launched a counterattack. Upon seeing this, Taoist Luya had no choice but to step forward and personally take action. However, what welcomed him was a loud roar. Luya! The 3 golden bodies of the great sage roared in unison. Within the Immortal Extermination formation, Yen Zhaoge could finally unleash the One Chi's 3 Clears transformation without any reservations. Chapter 1603. Within the Immortal Extermination formation, the Incongruence Divine Mother covered her bleeding forehead and fell to the side. Her aura was weak. Gao Qingxian left her clone behind to stabilize the Immortal Extermination formation together with Yen Zhaoge, while she replaced the Incongruence Divine Mother and continued refining the Immortal Ending Sword's Jade Radiance with the Green Duckweed Sword. When she opened up the roving Jade Heavens in the past, she had come into contact with the Qingping Sword. However, her cultivation level was far inferior to the Incongruence Divine Mother after all. so her refining speed was much slower. Fortunately, there was not much jade light left, and it finally began to fade bit by bit. After the black cloud's immortal entered the formation, he was just getting used to the changes in the formation when the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor caught up to him. With Yan Zhaoge and Gao Qingxian connecting to the formation, while the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor didn't recognize the Immortal Extermination formation, he had a much easier time compared to the Black Cloud's Immortal. As the two fought against each other, Yan Zhaoge and Gao Qingxuan's clone continued pushing the Immortal Extermination formation circulation, suppressing the Nine Bends Yellow River formation. With the North Star Emperor using the Triratna Jade Scepter to deflect Dao Lord Lu Ye's immortal slaying flying saber, Yan Zhaoge immediately executed the Grand Commencement Divine Finger, reversing the One Chi's Three Clears transformation. 3 streams of clear chi flew out of the Immortal Execution formation and merged with the 3 golden bodies of the Great Sage. As the demonic aura soared into the sky, the golden demonic clouds appeared once again, and a tyrannical roar came from the clouds. The Great Sage, Heaven's equals true body, appeared in the mortal world. He had a hairy face and a thunderous mouth. He wore a phoenix feather purple gold crown on his head, a golden chain armor on his body, and a pair of lotus silk cloud walking shoes. As he spun the Rui Jingu Bang in his hand, the sky above his head and the yellow springs below his feet, his aura ferocious and lawless. Luya! The giant monkey roared. Now, I'll let you pick up the immortal slaying flying saber. Let's fight. Dao Lord Luya sighed. It's useless even if I pick it up. I can't get rid of the Triratna Jade Scepter in such a short time. However, even though you've manifested the true form of the Great Sage equaling heaven, you're still not at your peak. I'll give it a try. As he spoke, golden red flames ignited around his body, piercing through the void. The Xiantian Lifefire blazed forth as a golden red sun rose up above Dao Lord Luya's head. That sun was even hotter and larger than the actual sun. The shadow of a black three-legged bird appeared in the sun. Chapter 1604. His opponent changed from the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor to the North Star Emperor. But the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit was still eloquent. It wasn't as thunderous as before, but Great Monarch Gaochen was merciless in his attacks. His killing intent surged. The killing intent of the mortal world seemed to have gathered here, causing the pure land of Buddhism to lose its tranquility. The Buddha of Sandalwood Merit fought with North Star Emperor calmly. However, the golden lamp Sarira on his head was knocked over by the passing monkey, causing the Buddha to be in a sorry state. Karma has to be settled. The Buddha of Sandalwood Merit shook his head and smiled bitterly. North Star Emperor had no intention of showing mercy. Instead, he followed up with his attacks. 6 starlight divine pillars gathered and manifested thousands of celestial soldiers and generals, attacking the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit. However, what caught his attention was that the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit regained his composure and did not panic. Fellow Taoist North Star, why are you involved in today's mess? The Buddha said to North Star Emperor seriously, Fellow Taoist, there is no right or wrong choice in all these years, be it to fight or to make peace. However, fellow Taoist was thoughtless in today's most important test. Great Emperor Gaochen said indifferently, This is indeed the most important juncture. It concerns the rise and fall of Tao sect's destiny. Naturally, I have to come. If it wasn't for me getting rid of your eyes and ears, I should have arrived earlier. It's not too late. The Buddha of Sandalwood Merit had a compassionate expression. Fellow Taoist, if you didn't come today, you would have allowed the Tao sect's lineage to survive. Now that you're here, your fate will be completely destroyed. You're not too late, you're too early. North Star Emperor could tell that there was a hidden meaning in his words. He focused his gaze on the other party's face. The Buddha of Sandalwood Merit looked at the golden cloud that caught up to the rainbow light in the void. He saw the monkey appear and hit Taoist Luya's shoulder with his rod, causing the flowing fire to disperse and flesh to fly. He did not show any fear and sighed instead. All the glory of yesterday has gone up in smoke today. North Star Emperor frowned. Led by the Dipankara ancient Buddha, all the Buddhas, including the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit, chanted, He's here. The waters of the heavenly river suddenly parted. A powerful aura descended from the distance. Five-colored brilliance lit up the natural luck. In the clear and pure Buddha's aura, one could only see the blazing red fire, the vigorous green light, the heavy yellow soil, the sharp platinum, and the long black water. The 5 rays of light were inseparable and flowed endlessly. Inside the 5-colored divine light sat a Buddha. He had 24 heads and 18 arms. However, the 5-colored divine light in front of him spun and struck down again. The southern extremity longevity emperor's figure also disappeared. Chapter 1605. His previous opponent, the southern extremity longevity emperor, had disappeared. However, the Black Cloud's immortal wasn't at ease. That was because the 5-colored divine light was also descending upon him. The Black Cloud's immortal was shocked and hurriedly threw out a treasure hammer. Wherever the hammer went, it would split open the void and shatter the stars. It was so powerful that even the southern extremity longevity emperor had to be wary of it. It was the Black Cloud's immortal's personal treasure, the Chaos Origin Hammer. Although its reputation was ordinary, its might was comparable to Heavenly Lord Guangqing's famous cyclic heaven seal. But at that moment, Mahamayuri's 5-colored divine light shone down and collected the immemorial hammer. Fellow Taoist, please don't make things difficult for me on account of how you suffered at the hands of Tao Father Zhuan-Ti for many years, Black Cloud Immortal said helplessly. Mahamayuri nodded. Fellow Taoist, step aside. I won't make things difficult for you. The Black Cloud's immortal hurriedly retreated, but there were other people in front of Kong Xian, who took the initiative to welcome him. The monkey swung his cudgel once again, causing Tao Lord Luya to fall back. His old and new injuries flared up at the same time, and the cognately fire essence spurted out like a bloody mist. Then, as the golden cloud churned, the monkey landed in front of Mahamayuri, standing between him and the immortal vanquishing formation. Mahamayuri looked at the monkey in front of him, and his calm expression finally changed a little. He said with some regret, "It's a pity that all my skills have turned to dust. Now that I've pieced them together, I can only make a clay doll. Although I often feel that it's a pity, the great sage himself is happy to be free." The monkey opened its mouth, emitting the voice of the Northern Ocean clone. "As for whether he is a clay puppet or not, we'll only know after we battle." With that, Monkey raised the Rui Jingu Bang and smashed it down on Mahamayuri's head. Mahamayuri scattered the 5-colored divine light. Wherever the light reached, the monkey's body seemed to shrink and was swept away by the divine light. However, golden clouds appeared under the monkey's feet. With a somersault, it jumped out of the range of the 5-colored divine light. However, he did not take the opportunity to retreat. Instead, he continued to rush towards Mahamayuri. Mahamayuri's expression did not change, and the 5-colored divine light shone again. The monkey was once again captured by the divine light. He swung the Rui Jingu Bang in the direction of the dazzling void below. Grow! 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 Amidst the explosive roar, Monkey's body and the Rui Jingu Bang swelled up at the same time, and then smashed towards the green light within the 5-colored divine light. The raging divine treasure metal actually caused the green light to become thinner. The monkey leaped and jumped out of the 5-colored divine light once again. However, he did not retreat. Instead, he raised the Rui Jingu Bang and attacked Mahamayuri again. At this moment, the distance between them was extremely close. Seeing that the Rui Jingu Bang was about to hit the monkey, Mahamayuri stood proudly on the spot, not moving an inch. The 5-colored divine light descended for the 3rd time, engulfing the monkey. The monkey let out a long howl. As the golden light flickered, his body suddenly disintegrated, instantly splitting into thousands of clones. The 5-colored divine light swept out, sweeping down one monkey after another. However, there were still some who slipped through the net. They shrunk their bodies and jumped out of the cage. As soon as he escaped, the monkey's body immediately grew larger. Then he swung his rod at Mahamayuri's head. At this moment, the distance between the two sides was very close. Mahamayuri finally took a step back to dodge. However, the speed at which the Rui Jingu Bang was descending seemed to have suddenly increased, and Mahamayuri was unable to dodge it. He could only tilt his body slightly and take the blow with his shoulder. The glass golden body instantly cracked. However, Mahamayuri no longer retreated. The five-colored divine light appeared again, finally sweeping down the monkey. The monkey was trapped, but it refused to admit defeat. It swung the Rui Jingu Bang continuously, bringing about streams of golden light that spun, trying its best to repel the five-colored divine light around it. However, Kong Xian's five-colored divine light became increasingly intense, scattering down continuously. The monkey seemed to have fallen into a vortex. It felt that the divine light was getting heavier and heavier, and its body was getting weaker and weaker. It was as if layers and layers of creation worlds were pressing down on its body. Moreover, it kept on accumulating without end. The monkey wanted to break free, but Mahamayuri's appearance suddenly changed. The 24-headed, 18-armed Buddha golden body disappeared, and another Dharma aspect true body with a single head and 4 arms appeared. The new Buddha golden body faced the east. It was white and wore a white robe, a crown, a jade necklace, earrings and bracelets. It looked very dignified. It rode on a golden peacock king, and sat in the lotus position on a white lotus flower, or a green flower. It had 4 arms. The first arm on the right held the lotus flower, the second arm on the right held the karma fruit, the first arm on the left held the auspicious fruit, and the second arm on the left held 3 to 5 peacock tails. The five-colored divine light continued to revolve. After the two fought for a while, the monkey's body finally disappeared. When the others saw this, the people from the Tao sect felt despair. The Buddhists and the demon race didn't rejoice in the monkey's misfortune. Since the ancient times, how many people below the Tao realm could force Mahamayuri to such a state? Only that peacock was still too strong. The Jade Great Heavenly Lord's whereabouts were unknown, and the monkey had transformed. Among the Grand Heavenly Immortals, who else could be Kong Xian's opponent? Not only did he strengthen his defense after cultivating the golden body of Buddhism, even his five-colored divine light is stronger than before. Luya was injured by the monkey and couldn't fight anymore. However, it didn't affect his vision. Looking at the current Kong Xian, his gaze flickered. Yang Jian seemed to be in deep thought. He wanted to fight against Mahamayuri, and leave the others to Yen Zhaoge and the others, who were manifested by the great sage equaling heavens. The rock of 10,000 cloudy miles couldn't gain any advantage over the monkey. However, while the monkey's attacks were strong, he might not be able to break through the victorious fighting Buddha and the other's green lotus flag. To restrict the victorious fighting Buddha, the Mahasthamaprapta Bodhisattva, and the others, Yang Jian was still needed. Unfortunately, Mahamayuri was too strong, and the five-colored divine light managed to knock the monkey down. Only, Yang Jian had been keeping an eye on him. Within the immortal extermination formation, Yen Zhaoge looked at Mahamayuri with a calm expression. Mahamayuri noticed the abnormal virtual immortal as well. Yen Zhaoge smiled. Mahamayuri's expression changed. The five-colored divine light revolving around his body suddenly trembled violently. As the radiance continued to revolve, a silhouette appeared, which was faintly discernible. When everyone looked at it, they saw that it was the monkey that had been knocked down by the five-colored divine light. The monkey held the Rui golden cudgel in one hand, and a spirit stone in the other. The monkey roared towards the sky. Then, he opened his mouth and placed the spirit stone into his mouth. Swallow it. The golden radiance that soared into the sky suddenly expanded. It gradually pierced through the five-colored divine light and the universe's skies. The vigorous, tyrannical, and violent surging power vibrated non-stop. It caused the heavenly river to tremble. It caused the Buddhas to turn pale. It caused the peacock to bend his waist and lower his head. Mahamayuri was enraged. The five-colored divine light revolved rapidly and was about to knock the monkey down again. However, the monkey was currently standing tall. He stood within the five-colored divine light, unmoving like a pillar. The surrounding divine light was like the ocean. As Kong Xian swept through, it seemed like he could knock down the entire heavenly river if he wanted to. However, the golden silhouette stood tall and swung his cudgel towards the sky. With the momentum of splitting the ocean, a hole appeared within the five-colored divine light. Chapter 1606. The terrifying strike of the Rui Jingu Bang. had actually broken through the rainbow divine light from within. As the lights and shadows flashed, the North Star Emperor, the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor, Immortal Chiao Shou, the Nine-Headed Bug, and the others who were previously captured by Mahamayuri's five-colored divine light, took the opportunity to escape from the gap in the divine light. In a trance, they turned around and looked at the figure that tore apart the sea of divine light, feeling as if it was a lifetime ago. The other people outside were also shocked. Within the Immortal Extermination Formation, Yin Zhaoge said, "The Fushi Zither's power can't be activated by itself. It can only be activated in response to the Tao Ancestors' attack. However, it didn't truly seal this place off. Instead, the Grand Heavenly Realm experts rushed over." He smiled bitterly. The North Star Emperor came to help, but Mahamayuri also came. Kong Xian did not speak, as he just appraised Yin Zhaoge. At the same time, five-colored divine light revolved around his body, trying to mend that gap again and sweep away the troublemaker. The bitterness on Yin Zhaoge's face faded away, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He said leisurely, 100 years ago, when I wreaked havoc in the Immortal Court, I always rejoiced that I acted decisively and caught the Immortal Court off guard. Otherwise, if the other party had invited you, Wisdom King, to guard the place, I'm afraid I could only escape 100 years ago. It would have been difficult for me to kill the traitor and take my revenge. Mahamayuri finally said, "If there's anything different today, it might be that you can't even leave." As he spoke, the five-colored divine light began to grow stronger. The five-colored light grew brighter and brighter, as if an overwhelming tide was about to drown the golden figure once again. Today is indeed different. Yin Zhaoge was not afraid. We will also improve. He counted with his fingers and said, "For example, I don't need to join in myself. I only need 3 wisps of clear qi to manifest the true form of the great sage, heaven's equal. For example, we can maintain the existence of the true form of the great sage, heaven's equal, for a longer period of time. For example." Yin Zhaoge's smile didn't diminish. He said slowly, "For example, although there are many repercussions, it can help everyone recall the great sage equaling heavens during his peak." Before he finished speaking, the monkey in the five-colored divine light let out another long roar. Many golden clouds clustered around him. As he roared, his body swelled up again, becoming even larger. At the same time, 2 more heads grew out of the giant monkey's neck, and 4 arms grew out of its body. 3 heads and 6 arms. The same furry face, the same mouth, the same eyes of fire and gold, and the same Rui Jingu Bang. At this moment, the Rui Jingu Bang also split into 3 in his hands. Each of his 6 arms wielded it, and as it moved, it could destroy the heavens and the earth. The 3 pairs of eyes of fire and gold were even brighter than the sun. Its enormous body filled up the heavens and the earth, as if it had trampled on the mortal world, and stood in the netherworld's yellow springs. Its back was straight, and its 3 heads were pointed upwards, piercing through the clouds as it scanned the heavens. The 3 Rui Jingu Bang lashed out together. Wherever they passed, creation ceased to exist. Everything shattered into the primordial earth, water, fire, and wind from before the opening of the heavens. It was chaotic, and the surroundings were dark and chaotic. Everyone present looked at the giant monkey with 3 heads and 6 arms, and their scalps went numb. They squeezed out each word through gritted teeth. Chi. Heavens. Big. Saint. Looking at the figure that had finally broken through the five-colored divine light and jumped out, those who had experienced the primordial era's god conferment, war couldn't help but recall the scene of Tao ancestor Zhuanti breaking through the five-colored divine light. Mahamayuri's expression was solemn, but there seemed to be a dazzling flame in his eyes. His similarly huge transcendence golden body ignited with blazing flames, and the five-colored divine light spun rapidly to meet the great sage. Heavens equals 3 Rui Jingu Bang. Ever since the great sage, Heavens equal wreaked havoc in the heavenly court's divine palace during the middle journey to the West era, and battled the great heavenly Lord Jade Emperor. The most pinnacle battle of the Zenith realm in history was repeated. The great sage, Heavens equal, battled Mahamayuri. With the great heavenly Lord Jade Emperor's disappearance, this was the battle to decide who the current Zenith realm king was. In this pinnacle battle, both sides disregarded their surroundings and clashed without restraint, destroying everything in their surroundings. The massive heavenly river was cut off, the surging river water, and the revolving stars were all smashed into nothingness. Even the endless void outside the heavenly river's water vein was affected. Time and space seemed to collapse into a single point, wrapping everything together. Soon, this point expanded again, and the figures of the great sage, Heaven's Equal and Mahamayuri reappeared. The great sage, Heaven's Equal, was energized. With a long roar, he wielded the 3 Rui Jingu Bang with his 3 heads and 6 arms, pouncing towards Kong Xian again. Kong Xian's golden body was slightly dimmer, but the 5-colored divine light was still as bright as before. He did not back down against the great sage, Heaven's Equal, and the 5-colored divine light shone down. Both sides fought until the heavens and earth turned dark. One of them continued to activate the 5-colored divine light, as if it was endless, wanting to wipe out his opponent. The other swung his Rui Jingu Bang repeatedly, deflecting the rings of divine light that were attacking him. He searched for his opponent's weakness, and the Rui Jingu Bang struck towards his opponent's body. When the bystanders saw this scene, they were dazzled. What an unforgettable memory! Yang Jian's third eye on his forehead opened and closed continuously, looking at the 3-headed 6-armed figure. That was the Earth Essence Stone just now, right? Can you already bear it now? The North Star Emperor and the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor had complicated looks in their eyes. During the Middle Era, when the great sage, Heaven's Equal, wreaked havoc in the Heavenly Court's divine palace, they were one of the people who personally experienced it. The great sage, Heaven's Equal's strength was not only because his demonic body was indestructible. Without the Earth Essence Stone, the great sage, Heaven's Equal's indestructible demonic body, was one of the top existences in history. In the past, when he fought with the Jade Emperor, the two sides were in a stalemate, and he directly shattered the netherworld of that time. Previously, before he recovered to his peak state, he had already beaten Dao Lord Luya to the point of fleeing. Now that he carried the Earth Essence Stone and returned to his peak state, the great sage, Heaven's Equal, did not back down, clashing head-on with Mahamayuri's 5-colored divine light. Just the shockwaves from their clash was enough to turn the world upside down. When fighting with an opponent like Elder Brother, the outcome of the battle will be determined by the indestructible demonic body. The Rock of 10,000 Cloudy Miles' eyes flickered. In the current situation, even if the great sage, Heaven's Equal, was struck down by Mahamayuri's 5-colored divine light, he had the confidence to escape with his indestructible demonic body. However, once the 5-colored divine light was broken through, how many times could Mahamayuri withstand the great sage, Heaven's Equal's staff? Although the outcome of this battle was still undetermined, as the battle dragged on, one could gradually predict the outcome. If the Dao realm did not appear, he would be the only one reigning supreme. The current Zenith Heaven King was still the great sage, Heaven's Equal, Sun Wukong. He's not the real Sun Wukong after all. The Dipankara ancient Buddha stared at the battle. In his current state, he will definitely be able to maintain it for a shorter period of time. Let's see if Kong Xian can withstand it. At this moment, the connate 8 trigrams that originally enveloped the universe gradually disappeared. No matter how intense the battle in the heavenly river was, it was still safe and sound. The lotus petals of the silent green lotus trembled slightly, showing signs of blooming. The Fushi zither in the great Taoist master Xian Du's arms buzzed. The last string of the zither finally broke. Chapter 1607. The remaining strings on the Fushi zither snapped one after another, until not a single one was left. As radiances flickered, another earlier 8 trigrams lit up, covering the skies and enveloping the entire sky. The green lotus returned to silence, but the battle before them was still ongoing. Seeing the last zither string snapping, both the Taoism and the mountain sea demons realized that they only had a little bit of time left. After a short while, the Amitabha Buddha would descend upon this place. The 3-sided battle became even more chaotic and intense. The great sage equaling heavens, Mahamayuri, Dipankara ancient Buddha, Sua Mingzhang, Feng Yunsheng, Yuan Hong, Yang Jian, Rock of 10,000 Cloudy Miles, victorious fighting Buddha, Mahasthamaprapta Bodhisattva, Yen di Gaiety Buddha. Everyone was engaged in a battle. Taoist Luya, who was previously injured by the great sage equaling heavens, disregarded his own injuries and entered the battlefield. The Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor and the North Star Emperor had just escaped from the five-colored divine radiance. Without any hesitation, they immediately intercepted Taoist Luya and fought against the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit, Chiosho Immortal, the Nine-Headed Bug, and the others. Within the Immortal Extermination Formation, the incongruous Divine Mother barely managed to sit in a lotus position. Her aura was still extremely weak, as if she was on the verge of death. Gao Qingxian used the green duckweed sword to refine the final bit of jade radiance on the immortal ending sword. Yan Zhaoge and Gao Qingxuan's clones controlled the Immortal Extermination Formation. Suddenly, a black-robed Taoist entered the Immortal Extermination Formation, while cautiously observing the great sage equaling heavens and Mahamayuri's battle. The Black Cloud's Immortal had returned. Previously, he avoided Mahamayuri's attacks and didn't dare to fight against him. However, now that Mahamayuri was obstructed by the great sage equaling heavens, the Black Cloud's Immortal's thoughts were rekindled. Although Taoist Luya was heavily injured, the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor and the North Star Emperor couldn't be underestimated. Moreover, the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit and the others were here as well. Now that the Black Cloud's Immortal had regained his freedom, he immediately seized the opportunity and rushed into the Immortal Extermination Formation, intending to take advantage of the situation. Within the formation, Yan Zhaoge laughed upon seeing this. Black Cloud's Immortal, there is no way out of the Yellow Springs, yet you insist on barging in. Ha! The moment the Black Cloud's Immortal entered the formation, he felt the killing intent pressing down on him. Even though he recognized the Zhu Xian formation diagram, the shadow of death rose in his heart. This feeling was completely different from the last time he barged into the formation. The last time he entered the formation, he wasn't the main formation user. Although it was difficult, he was able to move forward, and he didn't have this feeling of imminent danger. Now, however, it was really as Yan Zhaoge had said, as if he himself had barged into a perilous land where death was certain. The Black Cloud's Immortal was shocked. Amidst the golden light and yellow mist, the doors on the four high platforms were already standing stably. 3 swords, Zhu Xian, trapping Immortal, and slaying Immortal, were hanging on the door beams of the 3 doors, glinting with cold light. Apart from that, on the beam of one of the doors, the shadow of the celestial extinguishing sword also appeared. The entire Immortal slaying formation began to operate at this moment, unleashing its power. There was no sign of it being unstable like before. He was clearly wrestling with the Nine Bends Yellow River formation just now. The Black Cloud's Immortal suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed greatly. The pitch-black chilly wind that filled the heavenly river had mostly dissipated. The water of the heavenly river was no longer as murky as before. It was much clearer than before. The stars in the heavenly river rose and fell again, faintly discernible. The Immortal Extermination Array became more and more stable and powerful. As for the Nine Bends Yellow River formation, it was the exact opposite. It was getting weaker and weaker. The others fighting within the heavenly river noticed the drastic changes. Everyone looked at the great sage equaling heavens and Mahamayuri, who were fighting as if no one else was around. How could they not understand what was going on? Unlike the Immortal Extermination Formation, which relied on the Immortal Exterminating 4 swords and the formation diagram, the Nine Bends Yellow River formation relied on the geographical advantage of the heavenly river's water vein. Then, the 2 grand heavenly realm pinnacle experts started fighting without holding back. As they clashed against each other, the heavenly river's flow was continuously broken, and the void was shattered. Although it was the work of the Tao realm bigwig, the immeasurable heavenly lord himself wasn't there yet. The Nine Bends Yellow River formation's foundation was continuously being destroyed, which severely affected its performance. As the 2 great formations fought, the Immortal Extermination Formation's strength naturally increased, and it eventually suppressed the Nine Bends Yellow River formation. As the 2 continued fighting against each other, The stronger one was, the stronger the other would be. They would continuously attack the other until their opponent was completely defeated. The stronger the Immortal Extermination Formation was, the weaker the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation was. Although they were more afraid of the Immortal Extermination Array being obtained by a faction with a Dao ancestor, the Orthodox Dao sects monopolizing the complete Immortal Extermination Array was also not something that the Dao ancestors were happy to see. This was especially true for the immeasurable celestial and the future Buddha. The reason why the Orthodox Taoism obtained the Immortal Extermination Formation was not to protect themselves. After all, this was a killing formation and not a defensive formation. It couldn't protect a universe or a world. However, no matter if it was the Immortal Court or the blessed lands of the White Lotus, neither of them could tolerate the Immortal Extermination Formation descending upon their territories. It was a massacre that not even a Dao ancestor could stop. Simply put, I can't prevent you from hitting me, and you can't prevent me from hitting you. You're not afraid of being alone, but you'll become a general without an army. The result of the mutual explosion. This kind of existence that was beyond one's control was naturally a taboo. Although the Heavenly River Basin was long, under the distortion and annihilation of time and space, by the Immortal Extermination Array, the long river that stretched to both ends without end was also swept back, and gradually engulfed, by the Immortal Extermination Array. The killing intent of the array surged into the heavens, destroying creation. However, above the array, in a boundless high place, a jade gate, an ancient bell, and a white lotus appeared. The broken strings of the Fushi zither turned into the Khanate 8 trigrams diagram, which could only stop one Dao ancestor at a time. At this moment, the jade gate, the ancient bell, and the white lotus appeared at the same time. As the Khanate 8 trigrams diagram slowly faded, a green lotus also appeared outside the Immortal Extermination Array. The terrifying sword chi that could destroy heaven and earth and destroy Dao did not pose a threat to the two lotuses, the gate and the bell. The Immortal Extermination Array could not harm the Dao realm mighty figures, and the Dao ancestors could enter and exit the array freely. However, if not for the 4 Dao realm mighty figures attacking at the same time, they would not be able to break the Immortal Extermination Array. However, even if the vast freedom heavenly demon had returned to the 9 underworlds, there were still 4 Dao realm mighty figures descending. Perhaps after they broke the array, there would still be a fight for the 4 Immortal Extermination swords. In the end, they would most likely obtain 1 sword each. No one would be able to gather all 4 Immortal Extermination swords and obtain the complete Immortal Extermination Array. However, all of this seemed to have nothing to do with the Taoists. In the end, we still reached this step. Taoist Luya shook his head and looked towards Yen Zhaoge, Yang Jian, and the others. He sighed and said, "The Fushi zither only has 4 strings. Otherwise, you might still have a chance." The Immortal Extermination Array had already stopped expanding. Yen Zhaoge cupped his hands towards Taoist Luya. "If there were a few more strings, you might not even give it to us." Taoist Luya laughed involuntarily. However, Yen Zhaoge suddenly blinked. "However, we still prepared some for ourselves. Hence, there are more than 4 strings." Huh. Taoist Luya's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly felt something. The Dipankara ancient Buddha, rock of 10,000 cloudy miles, and the others followed Taoist Luya's actions and looked towards the distance. Within the void, a jet-black banner appeared, with a person standing beneath it. It was the silhouette of a woman. Her aura was elegant and ethereal. However, a sharp glint was hidden within. Today, top-notch experts from all over had gathered here. Some had high statuses, and some had attained the Tao. All of them had extraordinary experiences. Almost everyone recognized the woman beneath the banner. In the past, the prime clear bigwig, the head of the 3 sky fairies, Fairy Cloud Sky. During the ancient investitures of the gods' era, the 3 sky fairies held the chaotic origin golden chalice and laid down the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation, causing Taoist Luya to flee. Almost all of the Jade Clear lineage was wiped out. In terms of battle results, It could be said to be the most glorious achievement among the prime clear lineage. It was comparable to Kong Xian's in the past. However, because of the primordial heavenly lord and the lord of Tao and virtue, they suffered a tribulation. Fairy Qiong Xiao and Fairy Bai Xiao suffered a death tribulation and entered the investiture god board. They then entered the heavenly court's divine palace. Fairy Cloud Sky was captured by the lord of Tao and virtue and suppressed under the Qilin Cliff. After that, Fairy Cloud Sky was allowed to stay in the Qilin Cliff for half of the time, every year, due to her sincere sisterhood. The other half of the time, she would enter the heavenly court's divine palace to accompany Qiong Xiao and Bai Xiao. Their 9 bends Yellow River formation diagram was kept by the heavenly court's divine palace. Because of this, now Yin Zhaoge and the immortal court could lay down the 9 bends Yellow River formation because of this. After the great calamity, the heavenly court's divine palace and Kunlun mountain perished. At this moment, she suddenly reappeared in the mortal realm. However, the Dipankara ancient Buddha and Taoist Luya weren't concerned about Fairy Cloud Sky herself. After all, the chaotic origin golden chalice had long been destroyed in the great calamity. Even if it was still there, it couldn't withstand the might of the Tao ancestor. They were concerned about the long black banner beside Fairy Cloud Sky. As the 6 banners fluttered, it caused one's heart to palpitate. Furthermore, Zenith Heaven heavenly immortals like the long-eared Dingguang Immortal and Fairy Yin Xiao worshipped the 6 soul flags with the Tao realm mighty figures. The Tao ancestors were not united. On the contrary, they had great enmity and competition with each other. If one side suffered heavy losses, and the harvest was not enough to make up for it, it would immediately be taken advantage of by others. If he could not stop the immortal slaying array on the spot, it was destined that he would not be able to chase into Lihan Heaven. In particular, the appearance of the 6-soul streamer and the 3 names written on it caused everyone to have even more doubts. In the end, I ended up helping others. The rise of the orthodox Taoism is inevitable. It seems this is fate. Tao Lord Luya shook his head and sighed. He was not angry. To him, the moment the immortal execution formation crushed the Yellow River of 9 Bends formation, the outcome of today's battle was already decided. In this battle, other than Mahamayuri's appearance, which seemed to be able to sweep through everything, the demon race and orthodox Buddhism almost didn't clash with each other. In order to seize the immortal execution formation as soon as possible, both sides used their strength to break through Taoism's defensive line. There were very few incidents where they dragged each other down. On the other hand, it was the orthodox Taoism that forcefully withstood the attacks from both sides. They successfully held on until the immortal ending ancient sword was refined, and the immortal execution formation was completely erected. If they were given more time, the outcome of the battle might be unpredictable. After all, the time that Yin Zhaoge and the others could manifest the great sage equaling heaven's true body was limited. Once this period of time was dragged on, the situation was likely to change even more. However, there were no ifs in this world. In the end, the orthodox Taoism succeeded. As for the others, they suffered a double loss. Tao Lord Luya was not only injured, he even lost the immortal slaying flying saber. The gourd was sealed by the Triratna Jade Scepter, and it fell into the heavenly river. Under the immortal execution formation's activation, the heavenly river flowed backwards, causing it to disappear without a trace. The Fuxi remnant zither was one of Taoist Luya's trump cards to protect himself against the Tao ancestor. If it was given to the orthodox Taoism, he would have received other benefits. In this battle, he mainly used it to defend against the immeasurable heavenly lord and the Amitabha Buddha, which was also what he wanted. Unfortunately, he couldn't obtain more. As for the Nailhead 7 Arrows book, that could only be used once per epoch, it could be said that his efforts were wasted. After such a huge battle, Taoist Luya felt that he had suffered a huge loss. Moreover, the demon race had lost 2 demon race great sages, the Yellow Wind Devil and the Black Clouds Immortal, in this battle. Almost everyone else was injured. The entire Astro Mountain's starry seas suffered heavy losses. Let's watch the next round. Unfortunately, there's another chess player. Taoist Luya sighed and retreated together with the Rock of 10,000 Cloudy Miles and the other great demons. The Buddhist Bantis didn't have the heart to continue fighting. The impact of today's incident had added many variables to the future. They urgently needed to rethink their plans and adjust their strategies. Thank you, Taoist. The Dipankara Buddha placed his palms together and bowed towards Mahamayuri. It's a pity that the immortal extermination formation was faster. Otherwise, Taoists would have a higher chance of winning. As expected of the great sage equaling heavens, Mahamayuri said. Even without the undying demonic body, there's still a 50-50 chance of winning against me. He shook his head and transformed into a Buddha radiance. The Dipankara Buddha looked at the silent victorious fighting Buddha and remained silent. Although they had the green lotus flag's protection, the Western Pure Lands had suffered significant losses as well. They even lost the Buddha of Virtue and the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit. The Dipankara Buddha himself had even lost 6 of his sea calming pearls. From today onwards, the 24 myriad heavens would no longer exist. Apart from that, there was another problem that had to be considered. Compared to the Orthodox Buddhism, although the demon race suffered a greater loss, the blessed lands of the White Lotus didn't suffer any significant losses from today's battle. On the contrary, the future Buddha, Maitreya, finally found an opportunity to escape from the immeasurable heavenly Lord and refine the humanly essence stone's fragment. As for the immortal court that was on the same side as the Western Pure Lands, they had lost the immortal extinguishing sword, allowing the orthodox Taoism to gather the immortal extermination 4 swords. Moreover, their grand heavenly immortals were already inferior to the blessed lands of the White Lotus. Now they had lost the percussion heavenly lord, making their situation even worse. After this, the immeasurable heavenly lord had to be more vigilant. With the orthodox Taoism in control of the immortal extermination formation, the 2 heretics were the most threatened. In recent years, the immortal court and the orthodox Taoism had more conflicts. If the immortal court and the Western Pure Lands were considered as one party, and the blessed lands of the White Lotus and the demon race were considered as one party, it was hard to tell who would be more affected from today's battle. However, there was no doubt that the orthodox Taoism would benefit the most. The immortal extermination formation was meant to be a chess piece. Now that we've failed, the variables will be even greater. The Dipankara Buddha closed his eyes and sighed. Chapter 16:12. Yang Jian, Mahasthamaprapta Bodhisattva sighed as well. The orthodox Taoism had backstabbed him from the very beginning. After discovering that the so-called Earth Queen's land was transformed by Yang Jian, the Dipankara ancient Buddha, Mahasthamaprapta Bodhisattva, and other top experts of the Buddhism sect understood. At the start of the war, they felt that the orthodox Taoism had already seen through the trap of the immortal court and the Western Pure Lands. However, the arrow was already on the bowstring, and it had to be released. Moreover, everything ultimately came down to strength. When Yang Jian revealed his true form, everything became clear. The direct lineage of Taoism was playing along. Even though he knew it was a trap, he still took the risk to use the only chance to obtain the celestial slashing sword. In the end, he successfully gathered the 4 celestial slaying swords and recreated the celestial slaying formation. Yang Jian didn't die, and he even transformed into the Earth Queen to confuse us. That's only one aspect. The Dipankara ancient Buddha shook his head. The key is the great sage, heaven's equal. If that wasn't the case, the Western Pure Lands would still have a higher chance of getting Mahamayuri to help. Even if the orthodox Taoism still had Yang Jian, Sua Mingzhang, and the others, they still had to face other experts. Although it's a pity, in the end, everything comes down to strength. Dipankara ancient Buddha smiled bitterly. It's just that we are not as strong as others. Dalord Luya wasn't the only one who used his trump cards. The immortal slaying flying saber, the 7 arrows nailhead book, and the Fushi zither. The ancient Dipankara Buddha, and the other great figures of the Buddhist sect, had also paid a hefty price. Looking at where Mahamayuri had left, the Dipankara ancient Buddha did not forget that the blessed lands of the White Lotus still had a Buddha's Saraira. Let's go. The emotions in the eyes of the ancient Buddha disappeared, and he regained his calmness. Today's matter is just the beginning. The situation will change greatly in the future. Namo Amitabha. The Buddhist Bantis chanted in unison and disappeared into the void. Compared to the resentment and helplessness of the other clans, the atmosphere in the Tishita Palace of Lihan Heaven was very different. Yin Zhaoge let out a long breath. Ever since he first learned that the immortal slashing sword had fallen into the hands of the immeasurable heavenly lord almost 50 years ago, his heart had been tightly wound. It was only at this moment that he could finally relax. The rest of the people around him had similar expressions on their faces. Everyone looked around the hall of the Tishita Palace and said to the great Taoist master Xiandu, "May I meet the Grand Supreme Elder? It's not that I want to neglect you, fellow Taoists. Without the Grand Elder's decree, I can't make a decision on my own." Great Taoist Master Xiandu answered apologetically. Yang Jian smiled and said, "I've been in Tishita Palace all these years. I haven't been able to meet Grand Supreme Elder." Fairy Yun Shao said calmly, "I've never seen the Grand Supreme Elder either." "That's a pity." The group of people felt a little regretful. Then they thanked Yang Jian, Fairy Yun Shao, and the great Taoist Master Xiandu. "It's all thanks to you guys working together this time. Otherwise, the outcome would definitely be different." The three of them shook their heads. "We're all on the same path. There's no need to be so polite. Today's matter concerns the fate of our Taoism, so we naturally can't stay out of it. With today's success, the situation will be very different from before." Fairy Yun Shao said, "However, we can't let our guard down. Otherwise, our years of hard work might go down the drain." As he spoke, he looked at the pitch-black six-soul banner. The 6 tails of the banner were now empty. There were no more names. Even if the Grand Supreme Elder didn't make a move, the existence of the immortal extermination formation would allow the orthodox Taoism to have the confidence to fight against the other major forces to a certain extent. They could even fight against Tao realm bigwigs. The immortal extermination formation couldn't harm the Tao realm bigwigs like the Amitabha Buddha, Maitreya Buddha, Immeasurable Heavenly Lord, Eastern Monarch Tai, and Mahasvara Heavenly Devil. However, no matter if it was the Western Pure Lands, Blessed Lands of the White Lotus, Immortal Court, Astro Mountain Starry Seas, or even the 9 underworlds, they would all feel their scalps go numb when facing the number 1 killing formation in history. However, there was a problem within this. Without the 6-soul banner and Fushi Zither to fight against the Tao ancestors head-on, the other Tao ancestors could still join forces to break the formation and obtain the sword. Hence, the immortal extermination formation could only ensure that it would be effective at the moment it suddenly descended. In other words, one chance to attack. However, the conflict between the other major forces was who would bear the losses caused by the immortal extermination formation's attack. This gave the orthodox Taoism a chance. This was the reason why Yin Zhaoge, Yang Jian, and the others worked so hard to obtain the immortal extermination formation. After the Great Calamity, the environment of the orthodox Taoism's direct lineage would be completely changed. The immortal extermination formation is often left in the Tishita Palace. I'm afraid Grand Old Master won't like it. The great Taoist Master Xiandu looked at Fairy Yun Shao and the incongruous Divine Mother. I might have to trouble the two of you in the future to carry the Qingping sword and control this formation to transform into the endless void. This was something that couldn't be avoided. Only in this way could they maintain their deterrence at all times. However, it was inevitable for the sword-wielding person to drift in seclusion all year round and become one with the void. Fairy Yun Shao nodded and said, "We can take turns. Senior apprentice Sister Wudong is injured now. I'll do it later." The incongruous Divine Mother, whose aura was still weak, nodded. "Thank you, Yin Shao. Although there's no name on the 6-soul banner, the outside world doesn't know if a new name will be written on it." Yin Zhaoge smiled and said, "Other than that, I'm afraid they're even more uncertain about the Elder Lord's thoughts." Although it was difficult for the orthodox Taoism to make an accurate judgment, the advantage of being part of the 3 clear lineage was that as long as the Elder Lord did not object, it could be taken as a tacit agreement. It could be said that it was a bluff, or that it was a fox borrowing the tiger's might. At the very least, this tiger's skin could still be used as a flag. Only they still had to be careful. As such, the group of people would hide in the Lihan heaven. It was not good. Only when good steel was used on the blade, and used at the crucial moment, would it have the greatest value. For example, the immortal extermination formation this time. Our Taoism was extremely glorious in the past. Now that we're at a low point, it's also in line with the heavenly Tao. Yang Jian smiled and said, after the low point, there should be a peak. Now that the dawn has appeared, we still need to unite. Then the future can be expected. Yin Zhaoge couldn't help but grin when he heard that. Just like what Yang Jian had said, before the Middle Era, Taoism was really powerful. Before the primordial heavenly devil opened the heavens, he fought with the primordial heavenly lord for the position of primordial beginning, and lost. After the heavens were opened, he was suppressed by the primordial heavenly lord. During the primordial era, the three sovereigns created and ruled over the myriad races. However, the Lord of Tao and virtue preached to the world, allowing the human race to obtain great fortune and stand out, leading the masses. While the human race still worshipped the three sovereigns, their martial arts followed the Lord of Tao and virtue and Taoism's three clear lineage. The first Tao realm bigwig to perish, the creation heavenly devil, was slain by the Lord of numinous treasure. From the primordial chaos before the creation of the world, to the primordial era, when heaven and earth were first formed, the three clear grand masters had never suffered any losses. It's good that our ancestors were rich. However, as the saying goes, every dog has its day. Remember the mobile version, M. Chapter 1613. In the chaotic era before the creation of the creation world, and in the primordial era when the creation world had just been created, the battle was much more intense and cruel than it was now. Not only did many primordial life forms and Khanate overlords perish, but even Tao realm mighty figures perished. The Taoism's three clear grand masters were able to occupy a powerful position in that era. It was evident how powerful they were. Later on, during the primordial era, Dipankara Buddha, Tao Lord Luya, and other major powerhouses joined the Taoist sect one after another, creating a golden age for the sect. Even after the Great God Conferment War, and the Tao sect's internal strife, the Heavenly Court's divine palace was still created. As for the three clear patriarchs, they had all transcended at the end of the ancient era. However, it was also because of the transcendence of the three clear grand masters that the boundary between the upper and middle epochs was a watershed that Taoism's situation was no longer as strong as before. From the beginning of the Middle Era to the current era's great calamity, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Taoism had gone through a process of extreme prosperity and decline. Afterwards, whether they would continue to sink or fall into oblivion would have to depend on Yin Zhaoge and the other successors. Today, the celestial slaying formation was successfully completed, and it could be considered as officially opening the door to the revival of Taoism. In front of them was no longer a glimmer of hope that made people tremble with fear, but a real light. However, whether this light would become brighter and brighter, or if it was just a fleeting appearance, would depend on what would happen next. But no matter what, today was a historic day. Even the two Tao ancestors as powerful as the creation heavenly fiend and emperor Shi will die. We still have to guard against arrogance and rashness. Fairy Yun Xiao said as she looked at the Fushi zither in the great Taoist master Xiandu's hand, which had all its strings broken. Yin Zhaoge smacked his lips, sighing unceasingly within his heart. Up until now there were a total of two Tao realm great beings that were confirmed to have fallen, both of them dying in the archaic Great Era. The first was the creation heavenly demon, and the second was Emperor Shi, one of the immemorial three sovereigns. Speaking of which, the three pure ones of Taoism had been domineering for a period of time. Logically speaking, the other Tao fathers would naturally be wary of them and join forces against them. However, time and fate were different. There were people who attracted more hatred than them. Previously, the Khanate fiend Tao stood against everyone and was suppressed by the three pure ones of the Tao sect, the three primordial emperors, and the second ancestor of the Buddhist sect of the Western sect. Later, Emperor Shi became the target of public criticism. The most orthodox Fuxi innate divination art was long lost, but even today, its name was still resounding. As the most powerful Dao realm cultivator in divination, Emperor Shi was destined to be feared by everyone. It was true that he couldn't completely calculate the past and future of the other Dao fathers, but just a little bit of prying was enough to incur hatred. There was also competition when one transcended the Dao realm. Emperor Shi, who was skilled in calculations, thus became a public enemy in the eyes of the other Dao fathers. According to legend, other than Empress Hua and Amitabha, even the Eastern Emperor Tai, one of the three ancient sovereigns, had participated in the siege against Emperor Shi. Although Emperor Shi could calculate everything in the world, he was also a cultivator of the Wei realm. He had his own specialties in this area. Even if he was inferior to Emperor Shi, the difference was not that great. Under the joint attack of everyone, Emperor Shi still fell in the end. The Fuxi zither was broken just like that. It passed through many hands, first falling into the hands of the Eastern monarch Tai, and then into the hands of Dao Lord Luya. In the end, it was traded to Yang Jian. It was put to use in today's battle. No matter why Daoist Luya traded the Fuxi remnant zither to us, this treasure played a huge role in our success. Yan Zhaoga sighed. The sixth soul banner could stop 3 Dao ancestors at once, but it couldn't stop the same person 3 times. The 4 strings of the Fuxi remnant zither couldn't stop 4 Dao ancestors at the same time. However, when facing one person, it could continuously sound 4 times. It was precisely because of the existence of these 2 treasures that the orthodox Taoism could obtain the immortal ending ancient sword without any Dao ancestors present. After that, they even managed to escape unscathed. Now that all of the zither's strings were broken, the Fuxi zither no longer had any miraculous properties. It was just like an ordinary broken zither. However, Yan Zhaoga and the others still bowed towards the Fuxi zither. After that, please keep this treasure in the Tishida Palace and let it return to peace. Thinking about how the Taoism's 3 clear Grand Masters had participated in Emperor Shi's death, and how the Fuxi remnant zither had helped Taoism take a decisive step forward, Yan Zhaoga and the others felt complicated. Other than the Fuxi zither, the 6th soul banner can only be refined by the Dao ancestors. For us, unless the Elder Lord takes action, we can't count on it for now. After a while, Yang Jian said. As he spoke, he turned his head to look at Yan Zhaoga. Yan Zhaoga understood what he meant and smiled bitterly. Although we managed to block Mahamayuri, there are many repercussions. For a long time, the great sage equaling heavens wouldn't be able to reappear. It might take more than 10 years, or even 100 years. Even if we could manifest the great sage equaling heaven's true body, we wouldn't be able to fuse with the earthly essence stone for a long time. Everyone shook their heads and sighed upon hearing his words. Yan Zhaoga spread his palms apart. Although it's not like Taoist Luya's nailhead 7 arrows scripture, which can only be used once per epoch, the interval between uses is still extremely long. We can't count on it for now. Fortunately, we have the immortal extermination formation. Moreover, our opponents suffered even greater losses. On the contrary, we've gained a lot. After saying that, Yan Zhaoga turned his head to look at the southern extremity longevity emperor. Daoist Gao, it's been hard on you. The southern extremity longevity emperor smiled faintly. He opened his sleeves, and a silhouette jumped out. It was Gao Han. Gao Han held a gourd in his hand. Purple, white, and golden radiances flickered within the gourd's mouth. They were none other than Taoist Luya's immortal slaying flying saber, and the 3 treasures jade scepter that temporarily sealed the immortal slaying flying saber. Facing Yan Zhaoga's seemingly smiling expression, Gao Han said honestly, this Gao was merely taking a risk. After all, there were too many bigwig experts present. My success was purely due to luck. Furthermore, I have to thank the young Heavenly Lord for showing mercy. Everyone within the Heavenly River was engaged in a fierce battle. During the most intense moment, they couldn't take care of anything else. Gao Han sneaked into the Heavenly River and didn't approach the actual battlefield. Instead, he hid by the side and saw the immortal slaying flying saber falling into the heavenly river after the three treasures' jade scepter fell. After the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation was completely destroyed by the Immortal Extermination Formation, Gao Han took the opportunity to retrieve the gourd. In the end, the heavenly river was swept away by the Immortal Extermination Formation. Naturally, Gao Han fell within the Immortal Extermination Formation as well. Under the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor's protection, he was brought to the Lihan Heavens. You've truly put a lot of effort into this. Yin Zhaoge's gaze moved between the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor and Gao Han. The North Star Emperor was also looking at the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor. However, his gaze remained calm, and he only let out a soft sigh. The Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor retrieved the radiance from the gourd's mouth, which transformed into a jade scepter that flickered with 3 colors. This treasure holds great significance to me. Please forgive me and let me have it, the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor said. Other than that, I won't take anything from you. As he spoke, a 5-colored radiance surfaced in front of him. After the radiance retracted, a pearl appeared. It was heavy and vast, as if a universe was hidden within. It was clearly a sea-calming pearl. Chapter 1614. The Three Treasures Jade Scepter was the personal treasure of the Jade Clear Primordial Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. After the Primordial Lord of Heaven transcended, it was kept in the hands of the Jade Clear successors. After the Great Calamity, Taoism declined, and the world was no longer the same. Under the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor's search, the Triratna Jade Scepter reappeared in the world. Afterwards, he had also made use of this treasure when establishing the world beyond worlds. However, due to the pressure from the immeasurable Heavenly Lord and the Immortal Court, this treasure ended up in the hands of the North Star Emperor. The Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor himself, as well as Gao Han, Ling Qing, and the others who had left the world beyond worlds with him, were all attempting to retrieve this treasure. Previously, when Sua Mingzhang ascended to the Grand Heavenly Realm and Yin Zhaoge split the world beyond worlds into 2, Gao Han and Ling Qing had attempted to help the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor retrieve the Three Treasures Jade Scepter. Unfortunately, they failed in the end. Now that the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor finally had a chance to retrieve the Three Treasures Jade Scepter, he naturally wouldn't let it slip by. However, he was not the one in charge of today's big battle. There were many important things that he could not decide with just a word. Although it would not cause others to fall out with him, it was better to avoid conflicts that could be avoided as much as possible. Gao Han sneaked into the Milky Way to wait and secretly search for treasures. This was not open and aboveboard. The incongruence Divine Mother was gravely injured, while Yin Zhaoge and Gao Qingxian were the controllers of the Immortal Extermination Formation. If not for Gao Han, the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber and the Three Treasures Jade Scepter would have fallen into Yin Zhaoge and Gao Qingxuan's hands. Due to the relationship between Xiao Junhuang and Xue Chuqing's lineage and the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor, Yin Zhaoge might not be able to keep the Three Treasures Jade Scepter for himself. However, the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor and Gao Han obviously wanted to have a 100% chance of retrieving the treasure, which was why they took the initiative to attack. In exchange, the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor had to give Yin Zhaoge an explanation. The current Yin Zhaoge, Feng Yunsheng, Yin Di Su Fei, and the others behind him were undoubtedly worthy of the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor's attention. The sea-calming pearl was the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor's compensation and apology. At the same time, he did not keep the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber for himself. Instead, he handed the gourd to Yang Jian. This was within everyone's expectations. Without Daolord Luya's secret technique, no one would be able to activate the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber. Even if they obtained it, no one knew when they would be able to figure out how to use it. However, no one wanted it. Even if the facts had proven that this precious treasure was no longer Yang Jian's absolute counter, it still more or less posed a slight threat to him. If someone schemed and was determined to obtain the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber, what would Yang Jian think? As for Yang Jian obtaining it, Yang Jian's own strength was formidable. If he could not do anything to an opponent, the immortal slaying flying saber would most likely not be able to take it down. Luya's treasure seems to be fated with me. Yang Jian now had some experience in dealing with the immortal slaying flying knife. The further he went, the less afraid he was. However, he did not refuse and took the gourd with a smile. Then, Yang Jian also opened his palm and took out a sea-calming pearl that was flashing with 5-colored light. I'm either staying in the Tushita Palace or wandering around. I have no plans to reopen my cave abode. This sea-calming pearl is useless to me. I'll give it to someone who needs it, said Yang Jian with a smile. He looked at the incongruence Divine Mother. Divine Mother, you've been severely injured after obtaining the immortal extermination formation for our Taoism. You should focus on recuperating. Regardless of whether you're recuperating after opening up the universe, or educating the future generations to bring glory to the prime clear lineage, this treasure will be useful. The Dipankara ancient Buddha had lost 6 sea-calming pearls in the heavenly river. These sea-calming pearls were not sucked into the immortal extermination formation along with the heavenly river. Before that, the 6 heavenly venerables of the Tao sect, Yang Jian, the southern extremity longevity emperor, Feng Yunsheng, Sua Mingzhang, the great Taoist master Xiandu, and the great Gaochen emperor, each had 1 pearl. The North Star Emperor had cast aside his previous enmity and rushed over to help. However, he had lost the Triratna Rui scepter. Furthermore, it was not lost to his opponent, but to his fellow Taoist. It was inevitable that he would feel depressed. However, when he obtained the Triratna Rui scepter, he had a complicated relationship with the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor. The current him was like the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor back then. The grudges and entanglements between them were difficult for bystanders to distinguish. To him, obtaining a sea-calming pearl was considered a consolation. The Tao sect had successfully obtained the immortal extermination formation and benefited as a whole. The North Star Emperor was no exception. I naturally can't use this sea-calming pearl. Great Taoist Master Xian Du saw that the goddess incongruence had accepted Yang Jian's sea-calming pearl. After thanking her, he took out the sea-calming pearl that he had obtained and said to Fairy Yun Xiao, "Fellow Taoist, you can use it to reopen the 3 immortal island lineage as a foundation." Fairy Yun Xiao did not act pretentiously. She took the pearl and fell into a daze under the 5-colored light. The original owner of the 24 sea-calming pearls, the mighty figure of the prime clear Jia sect, Zhao Gongming, had always called Fairy Yun Xiao brother and sister. After Zhao Gongming died, the 24 sea-calming pearls fell into the hands of Taoist Randang, who was now the ancient Buddha Randang. Looking at the sea-calming pearl, Fairy Yun Xiao could not help but think of her brother. In the end, she sighed softly and said, "I'm the only one left on the 3 immortal island. Senior sister Wudong is recuperating. I'll bring the immortal slaying formation into the void first. After senior sister Wudong replaces me, I'll consider reopening the 3 immortal island." Hearing her words, everyone felt that it was a pity. In the past, there were 3 goddesses, Yin Xiao, Qiong Xiao, and Bai Xiao of the 3 immortal island. Now only Fairy Yin Xiao was left. After the great calamity, the heavenly court's divine palace collapsed. Some people obtained their freedom, while others lost their lives completely. Fairy Qiong Xiao and Fairy Bai Xiao had both perished during the great calamity. The 3 Xiao fairies were as close as one person. Fairy Yin Xiao was naturally sad when she thought of her 2 deceased sisters. The matter regarding the immortal vanquishing array should not be delayed. After I make some arrangements, I will leave. If there are any other matters, I will need your help, fellow Taoists. Fairy Yin Xiao quickly composed herself. Everyone said in unison, "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Yin Zhaoga also kept the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor's sea-calming pearl. The pearl's mysteries were hidden, and it didn't seem very eye-catching. However, it still felt extremely heavy when he held it in his hand. If the sea-calming pearl completely released its power, it would be much heavier. Compared to the 24 pearls, one sea-calming pearl seemed rather weak. However, it was a treasure. The 5-colored radiance was dazzling, making it hard for others to guard against it. If the sea-calming pearl were to fall, most people under the heavens wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. They couldn't do anything to Sua Mingzhang because he was too strong. Besides, the sea-calming pearl wasn't only used for combat. If the space within was released, a layer of heavens would be manifested. Just by calculating its size, it would be even larger than the awakened sky cosmos. At the same time, the myriad things within could be reborn, and many resources could be produced. After some adjustments, it could be self-sufficient. It was often said that the Dipankara ancient Buddha had 24 heavens and 24 blessed lands. This was how it came about. Feng Yunxing obtained one sea-calming pearl, and Yin Zhaoge obtained another one. This was extremely significant to the awakened sky cosmos. Moreover, Yin Zhaoge's personal gains from this battle weren't limited to this. Chapter 1615. Taoist Randang lost 6 sea-calming pearls, which were obtained by the 6 Tao sect's grand heavenly immortals who participated in the battle in the heavenly river. Feng Yunxing had also obtained one. Adding on the other pearl that Yin Zhaoge had obtained from the Southern Longevity Emperor, they now possessed 2 sea-calming pearls. Apart from the sea-calming pearl, most of the other treasures that were scattered in the heavenly river were sucked into the immortal extermination array when it rolled the heavenly river. The power of the formation was extremely ferocious. Once the sword light grinded, these treasures would not be spared. Still, Yin Zhaoge was rather meticulous in controlling the formation, as he did his best to preserve these dead objects. Other than Gao Han, the immortal slaying flying saber, and the 3 jade jewels, all the treasures within the immortal extermination formation had temporarily entered Yin Zhaoge's pocket. The heretic grand heavenly immortal, the percussion heavenly lord of the immortal court, was in charge of the 9 Bends Yellow River formation to restrain the immortal extermination formation. In the end, he died tragically under the immortal extermination formation, without any chance to resist. He died without a complete corpse, completely wiped out by the sword chi. However, most of Percussion Heavenly Lord's personal belongings were kept. Putting aside the other items, there was a Sky Ascension drum that was of rather outstanding quality. It was a grand heavenly immortal artifact. Although there were many drawbacks to breaking through the origin heavenly tribulation as a heretic cultivator, it did not have much of an impact on the level of weapon forging and weapon manipulation. Although the Percussion Heavenly Lord originated from the heretical Tao, he was still able to fully unleash the might of a grand heavenly immortal weapon. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance to use it. Inspecting that Heaven Ascension drum, Yin Zhaoge nodded to himself. Most of the top-notch cardinal treasures and grand heavenly realm immortal armaments that existed in the world today had their origins in history. New grand heavenly immortal artifacts born after the Great Calamity were very rare. Sua Mingzhang had ascended to the golden immortal realm for over 100 years, yet he was still empty-handed. Even though he could display his strengths without a weapon, it didn't mean that he didn't need it at all. The biggest reason for this situation was the lack of raw materials. Since ancient times, talented people had appeared in large numbers. Many treasures could only be chanced upon but not sought. It was already a miracle for one to appear once, and it was very difficult to hope for it to appear often. From a certain perspective, Yin Zhaoge felt that this could actually be considered a good thing. The incongruence Divine Mother was now recuperating from her injuries. Fairy Yin Xiao was in charge for the first time. Only when the incongruence Divine Mother recovered her vitality would she replace her. After greeting everyone, Fairy Yin Xiao immediately set off. Since the Elder Lord was not seeing guests for the time being, the others discussed the future matters and kept their sea-calming pearls. After bidding farewell to the great Taoist Master Xian Du, they left the Lihan Heavens Tishita Palace together. After exiting the palace, Yin Zhaoge looked back and pondered. Chapter 1616. Yin Zhaoge looked at the board with the words Tishita Palace written on it. After pondering for a while, he followed the others and exited the Lihan Heavens. They descended from this wondrous immortal realm and re-entered the void's boundless outskirts. Do you feel anything special? Feng Yunxing asked Yin Zhaoge via sound transmission. Having paid attention to Yin Zhaoge's actions just now, she knew the reason without needing words. After meeting the great sage equaling heavens at the foot of the Five Elements mountain, Yin Zhaoge started suspecting if he was related to the Elder Lord. Now that he finally had the chance to visit the Tishita Palace in Lihan Heaven, it was a pity that he did not get to see the Elder Lord. I don't feel anything special, Yin Zhaoge replied via sound transmission. Feng Yinsheng was stunned. Nothing special? Yin Zhaoge muttered to himself. That's right, there's nothing special about it. It's just that it's strange. Feng Yinsheng nodded in agreement. After thinking for a while, she said, the great Taoist master Xian, Du didn't seem to be acting strange when he saw you. The great sage, Heaven's equal, had actual contact with Lao Jun, so he could see things from me that others couldn't. Yin Zhaoge said. However, his contact with the Elder Lord isn't as close as the great Taoist Xian Du, right? Either there's something fishy about it, Feng Yinsheng guessed and said, or is the great Taoist master Xian Du pretending not to know? Yin Zhaoge nodded and glanced at the southern extremity longevity emperor. This person is also very suspicious. He calmed himself down. Let's stop here and observe for a while longer. Everyone left Lihan Heaven and said their goodbyes. Yang Jian also left the Tishita Palace this time. He seemed to have something to do. Taoist brother, please wait for a moment. This Yin has something to ask you. Yin Zhaoge called out to him via sound transmission. All right. Yang Jian's expression did not change as he left. After a while he circled around, meeting up with Yin Zhaoge, Feng Yinsheng, Yin Di Su Fei and the others. There was already no one else around. Why are you looking for me, Zhaoge? Yang Jian said while smiling. I wonder what the meaning of your name is? You're taking advantage of me. Yin Zhaoge looked at Yin Di, who could not help but shake his head and laugh. The others all laughed as well. I grew up in a lower world from a young age. My hometown there was known as Yin Zhao. The people there were bold and heroic, with many people who sang sorrowful songs. Therefore, my father gave me my current name, Yin Zhaoge said smilingly. Please forgive me, Taoist brother. Yang Jian smiled and said, Speak, what do you want to ask me? The vast freedom heavenly devil assisted the Amitabha Buddha in obstructing the East sovereign. What do you think about this? Yin Zhaoge retracted his smile and asked slowly. Yang Jian also straightened his expression. It seems that you already have a guess. Fellow Taoist, you must have the same suspicions as us. Yin Zhaoge said softly. Connecting this to the immortal exterminating sword that year, could there be a connection between the two? Around 50 years ago, Yin Zhaoge and the others searched for the immortal exterminating sword. In the end, they discovered that the immortal exterminating sword was already in the Tishita Palace. Yang Jian transformed into the earthly deity of the Queen of Earth and used the immortal slaying sword to attract the attention of others, while he went to the hollow jade temple to retrieve the hollow jade glazed lamp. In the end, he relied on the hollow jade glazed lamp's light to exchange for the Fushi remnant zither from Taoist Luya, and used it to fight for the immortal extermination formation. In the past, Yin Zhaoge and the others didn't disappoint Yang Jian and successfully obtained the immortal exterminating sword. However, according to Yang Jian, the immortal exterminating sword wasn't always in the Tishita Palace. In reality, during the Great Calamity, after the Lord of Broad Accomplishment perished, the immortal exterminating sword, that was originally in his possession, ended up in the hands of the 9 underworlds. Only after the 9 underworlds made a deal with the Tishita Palace did the immortal exterminating sword belong to Taoism. The specific situation was handled by the Xuandu Great Taoist. Even Yang Jian didn't know the details, but he had his own guesses. The vast freedom, heavenly devil personally visited the Tishita Palace. The items that could be exchanged from the Tishita Palace were limited. If he wasn't sure previously, the Western Pure Lands and the Immortal Court were able to convince the vast freedom heavenly devil to help them in this war. The price that they offered was definitely not small. Connecting the two, one's imagination would naturally run wild. There were many deals that could convince the 9 underworlds, but there were only a few deals that could convince the vast freedom heavenly devil. The supreme heavenly devil, An Su Fei said in a deep tone. The faceless heavenly devil. Yin Zhaoge, Feng Yinsheng, Yin Di, Yang Jian, and the others remained silent. The devils originally had 6 devil ancestors. However, the Grand Clear Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue, and the Western Amitabha Buddha, used their great abilities and wisdom to snatch 2 of the positions. As a result, the 3rd ancestral devil became the Lord of Tao and Virtue's incarnation, the Grand Heavenly Devil, while the 4th ancestral devil became the Amitabha Buddha's incarnation, the Faceless Heavenly Devil. Incarnations weren't clones. Strictly speaking, the 2 devil ancestors weren't actual existences. From Yin Zhaoge's perspective, it would be more appropriate to say that they were the incarnations of the Lord of Tao and Virtue and the Amitabha Buddha. Chapter 16-17. A chance that many people are waiting for. Yin Zhaoge repeated his words. He and the others looked at each other and said in unison, "A chance to ascend to the Tao realm? A grand heavenly immortal, demon race great sage, or blessed lands Buddha would have the chance to ascend to the Tao realm. The closer they got to the Tao realm, the harder it would be. Not only would they have to break through, but they would also have to face their competitors. From a certain perspective, the competition of the great Tao and the competition of fortune didn't exist in harming others without benefiting oneself. Harming others would definitely benefit oneself. If one's chances were lesser, one's chances would be greater. In other words, having fewer competitors would increase one's chances. In the past, due to the uniqueness of the Maitreya Buddha's lineage, he could have easily succeeded the Tathagata Buddha and become the new blessed lands of Saha's master. However, after being scammed, he could only change his path and transform the central blessed lands of Saha into the blessed lands of the White Lotus. This matter had far-reaching effects. Although the future Buddha, also known as the Maitreya Buddha, ascended to the Tao realm and stabilized the fate of the blessed lands, it also caused chaos. Many Buddhist Bantis perished, and many Buddhist Bantis left to join the Western Pure Lands. Yin Zhaoge speculated that the immeasurable Heavenly Lord's birth, which triggered the chaos of the Heavenly Court's divine palace after the Great Calamity, was the result of a Taoism Heavenly Immortal's advancement. In the end, he succeeded and transformed into the immeasurable Heavenly Lord, ascending to the Tao realm and becoming a Tao ancestor. However, the calamity that affected the entire Great Thousand Worlds was the start of it. Most of the orthodox Taoism's lineages suffered from the calamity and only recovered their vitality today. All Tao ancestors were born earlier. After confirming that the Tathagata Buddha was Taoist Juanti's incarnation, it was confirmed that only the immeasurable Heavenly Lord and the future Buddha had achieved the Tao ancestor's position after birth. Among the grand heavenly realm pinnacle experts, which of them didn't yearn for the Tao realm? At this stage, even if they cultivated the same Tao art, everyone's path of ascending to the Tao realm might be different. However, other than their own efforts, it also depended on luck. In this world, such a huge fortune was limited. For example, the immeasurable Heavenly Lord and the future Buddha to gather faith power using humanly essence stone. It was already a rare occurrence. It was impossible for a third person to appear. As for the two of them, they influenced each other and became mortal enemies, fighting each other to this day. Different people, different paths, but in the end, they might have to fight for the same opportunity. More often than not, a fortuitous encounter could only create one person. 9 Nether. Feng Yunxing took a deep breath. While the demons were busy plotting, the others had never forgotten about them. It was just that the time had not come yet, and everyone was still in the stage of laying out their plans. Isn't it like killing pigs during the new year in the secular world? When the pigs are fattened up, they can be slaughtered during the new year, and then the whole family will have a fat year. Yin Zhaoge smiled. Yang Jian also laughed and shook his head. It looks like it, but this wild boar has rough skin and tough hair. It's extremely strong, and its fangs are sharp. It could turn around and stab a person to death at any time. Feng Yunxing didn't laugh. She thought of Jian Shenhua and herself. There were already signs of an impending catastrophe. Under the power struggle of many parties, no one dared to say that they could grasp the situation, nor could they say that they could predict the outcome. In this great calamity, what role would she play? What would be the final outcome? In this scheme of the 9 underworlds, the ones who acted included our Taoism seniors, right? Yin Zhaoge turned and looked behind him. The Tishita Palace of Lihan Heaven was so high that it was difficult for those who were in the boundless void outside the realm to find their bearings. However, this action of Yin Zhaoge's was very obvious. The 9 Nether used the immortal slaying sword to exchange for the authority of the Taishang demon. The Grand Supreme Elder did not comment on it, and left it to the Great Master Xian Du to handle. In the end, the Great Master Xian Du agreed to the deal. If a general wishes to take something, he must first give it. This principle was the same for 9 Nether, and those who wanted to make use of 9 Nether to accomplish their own good deeds. For example, in the transaction between the Western Pure Lands and the 9 Underworlds, they used the faceless Heavenly Devil's authority to exchange for the Great Freedom, Heavenly Devil's assistance. Not only was it for this fight for the immortal execution array, but it was also to pave the way for what was to come. Therefore, when the Tao sect sought the immortal extermination formation and the 4 immortal extermination swords, the Great Freedom Heavenly Demon of the 9 Underworlds brought the immortal extermination ancient sword to the Tishita Palace. If Taoism kept the Taishang demon captive, the 9 Nether wouldn't be able to move, and the other parties wouldn't have a chance either. Opportunities needed to be created by everyone. Giving others a chance was also giving oneself a chance. Everyone was well aware of this. While they had a tacit understanding, they were also on guard against each other. As for who would succeed in the end, and who would be sacrificing for others, it would depend on their own luck and methods. Obviously, the Great Master Xian Du understood this logic and did the same. Although he was the Elder Lord's disciple, he still had to compete with others if he wanted to ascend to the Tao realm. It's not just one person, and it's not purely for the 9 Nether's plan either. They're just acting according to the situation, said Yang Jian. Yin Zhaoge nodded. That's right. Everything is intertwined, and everything is intertwined. An opportunity will appear in the midst of chaos. Didn't the orthodox Taoism rise again because they were constantly searching for opportunities in such an environment that affected all directions? If Taoism could really gain another Tao ancestor, the meaning would naturally be different. Are you also calculating this plan, Taoist? Asked Yin Zhaoge. Yang Jian shook his head. I've embarrassed myself. My path ahead is still a little blurry, and I haven't completely sorted it out. The opportunity to ascend to the Tao realm is most likely not in the 9 Nether's plan. However, if we can really gain another Tao ancestor, I'd be happy to see it happen. Although his strength was extremely strong, it didn't mean that he was prepared to ascend to the Tao realm. It was normal for people's situations to be different. Yin Zhaoge's gaze flickered slightly. He looked at Feng Yinxing and pondered. 9 Nether. To them, they might still be far away from the Tao realm. However, this tribulation was closely related to them. Not only Feng Yinxing, but also Nie Jingxian. The Elder Lord's attitude is equivalent to going with the flow. He didn't go against the Great Master Xian Du's intentions, but he doesn't intend to create a new Tao ancestor for Taoism. Yin Zhaoge retracted his thoughts and looked at Yang Jian. He doesn't seem to care about whether the 9 underworlds could establish the 12 devilish grand formation, whether the primordial heavenly devil would break out of the seal, or whether the doomsday heavenly devil would descend. Yang Jian said, the Elder Lord's thoughts are hard to predict. Whether he agrees or not, it wouldn't be surprising even if he rejects it. Taoist brother, you haven't made your preparations yet. May I know who's already prepared and waiting for the final step? Asked Yin Zhaoge. Among the people, the one who prepared the earliest should be the Dipankara ancient Buddha. Yang Jian answered. After the end of the ancient era, during the middle era, the Dipankara ancient Buddha should have already reached the final step of the grand heavenly realm. He only needed an opportunity to ascend to the Tao realm. However, this one step was the difference between the grand heavenly realm and the immortal realm and the Tao realm. They were two completely different concepts. I've heard others mention that the Dipankara ancient Buddha had spoiled the Maitreya Buddha's Tao path, causing the Maitreya Buddha to have no choice but to change his path? Asked Yin Zhaoge. Chapter 1618. What happened to the Maitreya Buddha was indeed related to the Dipankara Buddha. After a short pause, Yang Jian continued. However, if I'm not wrong, this matter involves the game between several Tao ancestors. We can't blame it all on Dipankara ancient Buddha alone. But he definitely can't get away with it. Yang Jian smiled. The Dipankara Buddha didn't leave the Western Pure Lands for many years to prevent the Maitreya Buddha from finding trouble with him. Previously, the Dipankara Buddha personally went out to search the awakened sky cosmos with the sea calming pearl and the rock of 10,000 cloudy miles. It was also because the orthodox Taoism's resurgence was too strong. The Western Pure Lands and the demon race reached a certain degree of tacit understanding and compromise to suppress the orthodox Taoism. With such a background, in addition to the immeasurable heavenly Lord pestering the future Buddha after he obtained the humanly essence stone, the Dipankara Buddha was able to act so openly. Now that the immortal extermination formation was involved, the Dipankara Buddha didn't need to be so cautious anymore. After all, the vast freedom heavenly devil obstructed the Eastern Emperor Tai and helped the Amitabha Buddha. From the looks of it, if the Maitreya Buddha followed the right path and took over the Gautama Buddha's position, he would have blocked the Dipankara Buddha's path to the Tao realm, said Yang Jian. That's why he had to take action back then. Yen Di frowned. However, even if the Maitreya Buddha's path was destroyed, the Dipankara Buddha couldn't replace him. Xuefei guessed. Destroying the Maitreya Buddha's path might only be one of the conditions for the Dipankara Buddha to succeed. It doesn't mean that he could replace him. However, if he didn't do it, he wouldn't have any hope. Of course, there's also another possibility. That is, Maitreya Buddha took revenge and blocked the original path of the Dipankara Buddha, causing the Dipankara Buddha to wait until now to change his path and seek opportunities related to the 9 underworlds. Although there were many guesses, it didn't change the fact. The Dipankara Buddha had already reached the pinnacle of the grand heavenly realm during the Middle Era. His strength might be inferior to the great sage equaling heavens, Mahamayuri, Yang Jian, and the others. However, he was undoubtedly the existence closest to the Tao realm. As long as he could take that step, he would be in a completely different world and have a completely different fate. After suffering for so many years, one could imagine how much importance the ancient Dipankara Buddha placed on this opportunity that concerned the 9 underworlds. Apart from Dipankara ancient Buddha, Uncle Master Xiandu should only be one step away, said Yang Jian. Great Taoist Xuandu, what did you exchange that Shakyamuni Saraira for with the Dipankara ancient Buddha? Yen Zhaoga asked with interest. They were already aware of that deal. Therefore, he was not surprised when Mahamayuri appeared. The great sage, heaven's equals true body, had to undergo the baptism of Mahamayuri's 5-colored divine light before it could fuse with the earthly essence stone and return to its peak state. However, it would be best if he didn't run into Mahamayuri. While it was a good thing for the great sage equaling heaven's true body to return to his peak, there were too many repercussions. In Yen Zhaoga's mind, it would be better if he could decide the time himself and seek out Mahamayuri alone in the future. However, it was impossible for everything in the world to go as one wished. There were priorities, and when it was time to act, one had to act decisively. Since he had already taken action, Yen Zhaoga was naturally concerned about what the great Taoist Master Xiandu had gained from it. In the past, other than the ginseng fruit tree, Zhen Yuanzi also possessed a top-notch treasure, said Yang Jian. Upon hearing this, Yen Zhaoga and the others understood. Earthly scripture? According to the legends, it was the prenatal layer of creation that was born alongside the heavens and earth when the world was created. Throughout the ages, the earthly scripture could be considered as one of the top-notch treasures. To be precise, it's half of the earthly scripture. Yang Jian explained. The earthly scripture was destroyed, and only a fragment was left. Dipankara ancient Buddha used this treasure to exchange for the Shakyamuni Saraira in the Tishita Palace. Yen Zhaoga nodded and fell into deep thought. Zhen Yuanzi was one of the top-notch bigwigs among the Taoism loose immortals in the past. He was one of the top-notch bigwigs in Taoism. After the Great Calamity, he disappeared without a trace. He was considered as one of the candidates for the immeasurable heavenly Lord. However, after the battle for the immortal extermination formation, his suspicions had lessened significantly because of the Nine Bends Yellow River formation. Although Yin Xiao Fairy was there, she didn't transmit any more formations. For the immeasurable heavenly Lord to be able to control this formation, he was most likely a bigwig of the heavenly court's divine palace. After all, others might not be sure, but Yin Zhaoge was very clear that the divine palace's martial repository had been completely destroyed at the beginning of the Great Calamity. Now that he knew that the earthly scripture was damaged, Zhen Yuanzi's disdain for it decreased further. However, he still couldn't eliminate his suspicions. Previously, the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor and the others had seen the figures fighting within the White Jade Door. It was very complicated. Perhaps only the people involved knew the truth. Does the great Taoist Xuandu have to use the earthly scripture fragment to ascend to the Tao realm? Yin Zhaoge pondered. Therefore, Yin Zhaoge, Yang Jian and the others did not know how many Sarairas Mahamayuri possessed, not knowing that the future Buddha possessed one. However, the ancient Dipankara Buddha still relied on the relic to exchange with Mahamayuri in order to fight for the immortal extermination formation. It could be imagined that after today, Mahamayuri would definitely not be able to gather enough relic. Otherwise, with Mahamayuri as a competitor, the ancient Dipankara Buddha would have a headache first. As Buddhist bigwigs, it's very likely that they're fighting for the same opportunity, and both of them will fall on the 9 underworlds. Yin, Yang. Under to Tao Lord to the Yang Jian worlds. The Buddha God all worlds. Yang Jian said. Not many people know about the details. Such matters are usually kept secret. Due to everyone's attention, some information leaked out. No one would wish for the path they had painstakingly planned to be destroyed by others. Their future would be filled with nothing but hopelessness. For such matters, it was best to keep a low profile. Unfortunately, this was everyone's focus. It wasn't something that could be kept low profile. Not mentioning all sorts of divination, just one person's preparation and searching for some necessary items would be able to easily see through it. However, everyone still had to force themselves to continue. They couldn't give up on eating for fear of choking. The closer one got to the Tao realm, the harder it would be. No matter what, someone from Taoism is just a step away. Yin Zhaoge smiled. Even if that's the case, it's still unknown when this great tribulation and opportunity will arrive. Yang Jian said. Before that, all we can do is continue to endure hardships and accumulate strength. Otherwise, when a fortuitous encounter arrives, it would only be for the benefit of others. At that time, we'll suffer a calamity and only have regrets left. After the 3 clear lineage obtained the immortal extermination formation, their situation changed greatly. They now had the confidence to stabilize themselves. However, they had to be cautious if they wanted to progress further. After all, no matter if it was the Dipankara ancient Buddha, Mahamayuri, or Tao Lord Luya, they might have the support of a Tao ancestor. The 9 underworlds, which everyone wanted to take a bite out of, at least had the freedom heavenly devil. It wasn't a pushover. As for the elder lord, he might not stand up for the great Taoist Xian, do if it was a real problem. It wouldn't really disappear just because it didn't exist. Thank you, Taoist, for dispelling my doubts. Yin Zhaoge cupped his hands towards Yang Jian. May you succeed. Thank you for your blessings. After bidding farewell to Yin Zhaoge and the others, his figure disappeared by the void. Yin Zhaoge and the others continued their journey. After walking by the void's boundless outskirts for a period of time and observing their surroundings, Yin Zhaoge and the others stopped by a universe. Let's do it here. Yin Zhaoge nodded towards Feng Yunsheng. Keep your sea calming pearl for now. Feng Yunsheng answered, all right. Yin Zhaoge took out the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor's sea calming pearl. The pearl was incomparably heavy, and it flickered with 5-colored radiances. Compared to the past, the heavens and earth are different now. Yin Zhaoge took a deep breath, and the profundities of the heaven-opening scripture, Grand Commencement Divine Finger, and Dragon Han Tribulation scripture manifested simultaneously. The 5-colored radiances on the pearl were unprecedentedly dazzling, and they continuously expanded towards the surroundings. As the radiances flickered, the sea-calming pearl also started expanding. The heaviness of a universe became more and more obvious, causing one's heart to palpitate. Under the continuous expansion, the 5-colored radiances gradually disappeared, and the sea-calming pearl itself also disappeared. Only space continued expanding, suppressing the void outside. Within this universe, many empty spaces suddenly appeared, and the entire place was filled with darkness. As Yin Zhaoge activated his heaven-opening power, the darkness was dispelled, and an extremely dazzling radiance was born from within. The chaotic earth, water, fire, and wind followed closely behind the radiance, and continuously surged forward. Within the cosmos, layers upon layers of unstable space appeared like boiling water. Then they popped like bubbles and more bubbles floated up. Under Yin Zhaoge's control, the chaotic earth, water, fire, and wind quickly calmed down and regained their calmness. The changes within the cosmos void stabilized, and it had its own rules. Then, specks of starlight lit up, and stars of their own were born. While it couldn't move, it was an existence even more vast and majestic than the awakened sky cosmos, and it spanned across the void's boundless outskirts. It was grand and aboveboard. Chapter 1620. Within the boundless void's outskirts, a brand new grand cosmos was opened up. Yin Zhaoge let out a long sigh and looked at the cosmos formed by the sea-calming pearl. A look of reminiscence appeared in his eyes, and he looked at Feng Yunsheng, Yin Di Su Fei, and the others by his side. After the great calamity, the heavens were destroyed, and all creations were overturned. Us Taoism's descendants suffered a huge calamity. Today we finally welcome a new beginning. He smiled and said, "Let's call this new starting point the Zhu Luo Royal Reed Heaven." The others looked at each other and smiled at the same time. Gao Qingxian temporarily stayed in the Tushita Palace and served the incongruent's Divine Mother, who was recuperating. Everyone present was of the Broad Creed Mountains lineage. After hearing Yin Zhaoge's words, the past surfaced in their minds. In the past, when the Broad Creed Mountain had just left the Eight Extremities world's lower realm and attempted to head to the world beyond worlds, their first stop was the Royal Reed Sea. That place's name originated from one of the Taoism's 36 heavens, the Zhu Luo Royal Reed Heaven. It was recorded in the world beyond worlds records. To the Broad Creed Mountain, the Royal Reed Sea was a brand new starting point. Now a new chapter had begun here. The impregnable past is as tough as steel. Now we're stepping forward, said Yin Zhaoge emotionally. As space warped, another vast cosmos gradually manifested. It was the awakened sky cosmos. Previously, Yin Zhaoge's North Ocean clone had left and returned to the awakened sky cosmos. After contacting Xue Chuqing and the others, they gathered at the awakened sky cosmos. After expanding into the awakened sky cosmos, many of the Pill Hall's original functions were weakened. Now that we have the Zhu Luo Royal Reed Heaven, the Pill Hall can be more relaxed. Yin Zhaoge said. However, it's still not the time for us to be complacent. We shouldn't get carried away. For safety's sake, let's let the Pill Hall continue drifting outside. Feng Yunsheng said. With the immortal extermination formation, other forces wouldn't dare to oppress us Taoism's descendants. We have the confidence to compete or trade with them on equal grounds. However, correspondingly, other forces would pay more attention to us. In fact, we might even attract the Tao ancestors' full attention. With the Pill Hall hiding within the void, it's no longer safe. That's right, all the rules have to be overturned. Yin Zhaoge smiled. The necessary caution is still necessary. Still we can begin advancing. The awakened sky cosmos and the Zhu Luo Royal Reed Heaven drew closer to each other. The formless boundaries of the two cosmoses started to come into contact with each other, pushing and repelling each other. However, they gradually formed something like a door that connected the two cosmoses.